Hey guys, so I am doing this video about Pluto on the day where it is finally going direct in the sign of Capricorn for the last time in our lifetime. Today is October 11th, but I'm going to leave this on because hopefully you guys will come back and check everything that I'm going to be discussing today. This is a huge year of change, and we've all been discussing it, in the astrological community for a while. And it's not only because of Pluto, all the heavy hitters are changing are starting to shift this year. Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Pluto, they're all changing. We haven't had a sky like this particular year in over 300 years. So about 300 years. So it's a big deal. And I just wanted to address today, on the day where Pluto is finally going direct, and it's going to be there for one more month until November 19th. Pluto will then finally move into Aquarius for the next 20 years. So I want to discuss what that's going to mean for each of the house placements. So you do want a couple of things, okay? You want to check your birth chart. You want to see what your rising sign is. So what is the sign that's in the first house? And where is in the outer ring, where is Pluto located? So you want to understand that that house is going to be rocked. Now, it's going to be the change that I'm going to be talking about today is going to be happening and rolling out for the next 20 years, but especially over the next year and a half, while Pluto kind of gets comfortable in there, there's going to be a lot of change and transformation over the next 1 to 1.5 years in the house that Pluto is moving into in Aquarius, the house where Aquarius is in your particular chart. Now, Aquarius naturally rules the 11th house, and the 11th house has to do with goals, gains. It has to do with the masses of people, group work, our friends, older siblings, stepchildren, grandchildren, daughter-in-laws, son-in-laws, um, and really making sure that we have like enough for the future really is very 11th house energy. It's very connected to technology and advances in medicine and science, right? So that whole arena, we could all kind of agree that we're all going to be experiencing change there. Right, globally, everybody's 11th house is going to be getting rocked, right? But also everyone's eighth house, the house of change and transformation, which is where Pluto naturally lives in everyone's birth chart, right? It naturally lives there. Those of you who are Cancer risings are going to be feeling this very profoundly, but Pluto's going to be very exalted for you guys. But we'll talk about that specifically when we get to Cancer risings. But everyone is going to be going through that change and transformation, other people's money, the stock market, investments, sex and intimacy, shared goals, divorce versus absolute commitment. There are going to be changes. So wherever anything like that is hanging out, there are going to be really big changes there. And this makes so much sense to me, particularly because even though Chiron is in Aries right now, Chiron's going to be moving into Taurus in about 2 years, that wounded warrior energy. So we're all going to be looking at our finances. How stable do we feel? Our resources, our possessions, our sense of self, our ability to feel secure in our life. And we're all going to be looking at our health differently, but I'll do a different video on that. But I do want to just say house 11, house 8, straight out of the gate. Okay. Then, of course, wherever Pluto is transiting. So I'm going to be addressing that, individually. And then also wherever Pluto is in your natal birth chart. You want to look at that house, okay? So in astrology, for those of you who don't know, the first house is, we're going to say, equivalent to Aries energy. The second house is equivalent to Taurus energy. Third house is equivalent to Gemini energy, and so on. I will have this in the description box below. So you want to check where is your Pluto placement, what house is it in. You don't ever want to just check for the sign. You also want to check for the house placement. Okay. And this is, of course, I'm speaking to those who know your chart. I know a lot of you are very happy to say know your chart really, really well. So hopefully that makes sense. So for example, if you have Pluto in the third house, let's just say you're a Cancer rising. I don't know why I'm bringing that, but if you're a Cancer rising, Pluto is going to be transiting into your eighth house. So there are going to be changes in the eighth house. But maybe your birth chart, Pluto, is in the third house. So you're going to also want to understand that Pluto in the third house energy to a lesser degree, but there's still going to be change there. And that would be equivalent to Pluto being in Gemini, right? That's how it works in astrology, right? You also want to pay attention to that with your sun sign. So, for example, like me, I'm a Gemini sun, but my sun sign is in the sixth house of Virgo, which makes me a Capricorn rising. So, I understand that even though I'm a Gemini sun, I experience my sun sign through the energy of Virgo, if that makes sense. So, not looking to confuse, but I'm just looking to further explain because I know I've been getting a lot of questions about Pluto and this whole change and all of this. So I'm really here to just kind of explain how it is that you should be handling your chart with this, okay? So you want to look at houses 8 and 11, wherever your Pluto hangs out, wherever your Scorpio is hanging out, because Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio, and wherever your Aquarius energy is. Those five, okay? You want to, the house that Aquarius is in, Scorpio is in, Pluto is in, Pluto transiting, okay? That eighth house energy as well as that 11th house energy, okay? You could stop the video, go back, write it down, and then go to your chart and look at it. I'm hoping I'm not being too confusing. If you want to work with me privately, all of the details are in the description box below. Is the link to my booking site is there. And with that, let's get into things. Let's just kind of talk about, first of all, let's just talk about what Pluto is, and then I'm going to break it out into each of the houses and each of the signs. What is Pluto anyway? Pluto is this planet of change and transformation. Nothing stays the same around Pluto. It's just, it's not meant to be that. Its task is to clear out the old, to make way for the new. And this is done very volcanically, right? By forcing everything that's submerged, right, underneath things to the top to be dispelled or at least looked at. At least, and this is, we're talking about anything in your life that hasn't been healed, that old friendship that maybe ended poorly when you were like in third grade, everything, right? Because we're talking about eighth house energy. Pluto is the natural landlord of the eighth house. And the eighth house, we have the largest basement, right? It's very sort of big, it's massive, and it's carrying energy from past lifetimes, not only from this one. It's the house that houses the energy that we carry in our ancestral DNA as well, that we need to look at. It's the stuff that we need to look at, especially the things that are a little dark, a little on the periphery, a little scary, things that control us, things that can create a lot of anxiety. Pluto is extremely passionate. He's very controlling. Right, he's very controlling. So we have to understand that and respect that about Pluto. He's extremely slow moving. He has not been in Aquarius since the revolution, right? So we're talking over 280 years, it's 280 years ago, I think. Um, that it's a big change, it's a big transformation, and it's meant to heal. Now, in the sign of Aquarius, it's going to be all about the future. So Pluto's going to be changing things for our future. Again, Aquarius, advances in technology, advances in medicine and in science, advances for the masses and for the people at large, advances having to do with group work in friendships. Friendships will be changing. And this could be a great thing for us, guys. We want to be careful that we're not looking at everything glass half empty because Pluto brings beautiful things as well. He brings birth of things, the birth of things. Yes, he brings the death of things as well and destruction, but to replace it with something new. Right? That's why Pluto does rule divorce, but he also rules absolute commitment. He's very connected to other people's money, external finances, the stock market and investments, as I mentioned earlier. So, and in the sign of Aquarius, it's doing things differently. So as a collective, we're going to be looking at our money differently. We're going to be handling finances differently. And we're also going to be looking at very controlling forces very differently. That very heavy paternalistic kind of energy, things are going to be brought up to the top, especially anything having to do with money, anything having to do with anything shady, anything having to do with sex, anything having to do with in investments, shady investments are really going to be like, all of these energies are going to be coming out. And a lot of you may have been experiencing this. I know a lot of you who are my clients were working through a lot of things that have sort of reared their head the past couple of months, totally on brand for Pluto, moving into certain houses for certain, right? So we want to just keep that in mind as we listen to these things. We want to kind of keep an open mind that, understanding the foundation of what Pluto is, okay? He's slow, he's serious, he's passionate, but he loves you. And that's something that we have to remember. He loves us. So what he's taking away from us was not meant for us. And what he's bringing in is meant for us. And really, what does Pluto want? Pluto wants to bring about healing for us. He wants us to shed our skin and create new normals for ourselves. So with that, I'm going to start by discussing Pluto in the first house or the sign of Aries. Pluto in the first house. So this would be Aquarius risings. Or if you have your Pluto in Aries, right? If you have your Pluto in Aries, this would be a lifelong transit. If you have your Pluto in the first house, this would be a lifelong transit. I will be doing Pluto retrograde at the end of the video if you happen to have your Pluto retrograde. Um, but for those of you who are Aquarius risings, are going to be experiencing Pluto in your first house. And this energy that I'm about to explain, we're going to open up to themes. This is going to be going on for the next 20 years. So some of you might feel the rumbling of this energy, but what's going on here, right? What is it with Pluto in the first house of your personal style, of destiny? This way of approaching life is going to go through a lot of change over the course of the next 20 years, especially for those of you who are Aquarius risings, because Pluto is all about change, but more specifically, creation and destruction, right? So you're going to express either one or both of these. It's going to be a bit like a pendulum, obviously, because it's a 20-year transit. So it's best to understand this and recognize, though, here your own destructive urges. Otherwise, you may unconsciously provoke events here, other people, or even your own body to act as an agent of destructuring you, right? Because it has to do with the physical body. So you want to make sure that if you do anything that is harmful to your body, harmful to the path that you're walking on, harmful to the connections in your life, because remember that first house energy opposes the seventh house of serious relationships, of contracts, of bosses, close friendships. We have to be careful, right? That we're not deconstructing things for ourselves in an unhealthy way. So in other words, one way or another, that underworld realm of hidden thoughts and feelings and motivation, it has to be reckoned with within you. Right? I mean, where do you get in your own way? Where are you too stuck? Where are you not willing to make changes? Where do you expect too much from other people? Right? And you cannot escape this untouched, right? This transit, it's just not possible. If you're going to try to live on the surface of things, if you're going to try to have some sort of energy of just like disconnect and not want to deal, it's not going to go well for you, right? You have the opportunity. As a Capricorn rising, I just finished having Pluto in transit my first house from 2008 all the way up till now, and I'll tell you, my life looks completely different. I think it was an excellent thing for me. Yes, I got divorced. Yes, I moved a bunch of times. Yes, I did get remarried. I'm still married to that person. It ended up being a great thing. The changes that I made were wonderful for my children. Were there periods of challenge? Absolutely. 100%. Did that this last little end of this Pluto transformation bring something out to the top because it's going into my house of internal health versus external health? Yes, I just got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. It's not the end of the world, but things come to the surface, right? But overall, amazing thing, amazing benefits. Um, and a lot of it has to do with I knew even when things were tricky, it was just there was going to be another side to it, right? So even if things are going if things are going to be a little challenging, please don't throw your hat, in the gutter and say, the hell with this. I don't want to deal with these changes. This is too difficult. I can't see the light. I can't. none of that will last, okay? But you have to stay open and you have to allow the change. So you have to recognize where you might be employing your own destructive urges. And it could be for a bunch of reasons. For example, you might feel that your progress or evolution is being blocked, right? Or impeded by certain structures in your life, like maybe that job, maybe that relationship, maybe your children, the situation going on with that friend group, whatever it is. Then you will need to remove them or make room for possibilities there in order for there to be growth. I don't mean discard these energies. I mean, you're going to need to create certain boundaries in your life. And if you don't acknowledge your frustration and do something positive with it, then you might act in a way as to force that other person to either fire you, end the relationship, break off the friendship, whatever it is, because you're not able to do it. It will be a job that you don't really like. It would be a relationship that you know deep in your gut is not good for you, or that friendship that's toxic. So, as a general rule, it is dishonest and not to your advantage to displace any sort of responsibility that's going on in this house. So, you don't want to displace any responsibility for the path that you're walking in your life and what feels genuine to you, what feels connected to your integrity. This doesn't mean I'm suggesting you're going to be very selfish, but it's going to be very hard to be on a path that you know damn well is not good for you. Now, maybe there would have been a point in time where you would have been a lot more accepting, but you're not going to be willing to do that now, especially over the next 20 years. Now, you may, without even really realizing it, employ your own destructive powers because there's something out there making you feel very vulnerable and endangering your sense of safety and security here. And the thinking is, it's like, let me get it before it gets me. That's that very like scorpionic, plutonic kind of thing, almost like a scorpion, right? What do scorpions do when they feel threatened? They lash out and sting to kill whatever is coming after them, but then they sacrifice themselves in the meantime, right? Because then they end up dying after they sting, right? So there is this part of you which will promulgate almost anything for your own survival, and that will make you act that very sort of scorpion-like energy where, again, let me end that relationship before they end it, or let me end this job before I lose my job, or let me end this friendship before anything else. And so you want to be careful of that, right? It's a very, that primitive instinct is going to be driving your nature in a way where you're going to feel like um, you want to own things and get in front of them before they can get you. And you just have to be mindful of that. Okay. You will periodically, of course, orchestrate sweeping changes in your lifestyle because it is first house, which does rule your lifestyle. So you might dramatically alter your physical appearance at some stage. You might, change your hair, change your makeup, the way you dress, the way you present yourself to the world. Some of you may even take part in some sort of plastic surgery, some sort of cosmetic work, anything like that. Very on brand for Pluto in the first. Now, with Pluto in the house of your ascendant, now I'm especially speaking to those of you who naturally have Pluto in the first, or you are Aquarius risings, you're right here, you're going to be, and this is going to be very interesting kind of experience for you guys. There's going to be something about your birth experience that's going to be coming back around in your energy. So it's not to say that you're going to wake up on a random day and remember the day that you were born, but there's an energy that's going to be recycling in you. And especially if it had to do with anything connected to life or death, if there was any sort of struggle with that, or if there was any sort of struggle of having to do with if you weren't, just by default, if you weren't being fed enough, like as an infant, or if you were being smothered with love, right, which is beautiful, all of those energies are going to come back around, and that's going to be something that you're going to actually be looking for. Right? Looking for those energies, or you're going to be very mindful of them, right? So obviously, if there was food insecurity, you could feel very insecure during these times, right? Again, it's a very cyclical kind of energy, and you're not going to be able to really put your finger on it. At the same time, you're going to be looking for that level of love and affection that you got around your birth experience. Now, this also suggests that the idea of any sort of early year experiences, not only very early, but maybe even like the first like 3, 4 years, if there was anything that was marked by like difficulties and traumas where it ended up imprinting on you in some way that life was difficult or like life was a struggle, um, there could be this realization, you know what? The world, like life, is just not easy, right? And you understand this energetically. It's coming up within you because it's at least how it is that you feel. Life isn't easy. Life's not always on your side. Um, and you might even recognize within yourself, this is so common. There could be even like a ruthless kind of energy where you sense you need to be that way for your own survival. And I know that sounds very hyperbolic, but it's worth thinking about because it's something that you are going to be sort of going through. This idea of, am I secure? Am I not secure? You can live your life anticipating disaster, making you feel like you have to protect and barricade yourself against some kind of like destruction and doom, right? That you're just sort of feeling. It's this vague feeling that you just, some of you may have a very legitimate reason to feel like that. But this is not to say that those of you who aren't in an environment where that would make sense, you're still going to feel it energetically. So for this reason, having this placement can indicate almost like a loner type of energy where you find it very difficult to blend in with others. And especially if you feel like you're not in control, if you're not in total control of something, you feel like something terrible might happen. So that is something that you just need to be mindful of, that you can exist in groups of friends, you can exist in family environments, you can exist with people who love you, all of that. But there's going to be some kind of element where you feel different than everybody. And there's going to be this element within you where you do feel alone. But it's actually kind of by choice, right? Unless you take the risk and you open up, right? And you do it with very serious intensity, right? And that is something that you will experience. Like you will come out, you will open up, but you're going to be very sort of, I'm not even going to say calculated because that sounds like there's malice attached to it, but you're going to be very serious about it, right? You can exude a very powerful sexuality with Pluto in the first house. Absolutely. 100%. This placement typically has a tremendous endurance, can dedicate a lot of energy, very, very focused to any sort of cause, any sort of project, any sort of endeavor, anything that you put your mind to. So, so good. Your willpower is going to be off the charts, which is fantastic. Now, you might battle between using this power constructively or destructively. Again, it's a 20-year transit, so just keep that in mind. And your life may be a story for the next 20 years of many ups and downs as you need to experience both the best and the worst of this transit. Again, because you want to think about Pluto as like a wheel, right? It's like a big wheel, and he's very slow. He slowly goes through the mud, and he's got like spikes on the bottom, and he will go and dig up and then bring to the surface, right? So there's always this sort of this it's a recycling of things to look at, throw away so that new can be presented, right? So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And if you'd like more of um, these kind of videos where it's very focused on one planetary placement, let me know in the description box below. You guys take care now. Bye-bye. And then those of you who are either Capricorn risings like me, Pluto in the second house, or Pluto in Taurus, this message is for you. So let's talk about this energy here, right? Pluto is all about that change and transformation. And like Uranus and Neptune in a house, Pluto implores you to probe more deeply into the meaning of that area of life to be lived in an ordinary or uncomplicated way in that house, right? So the second house, among other things, we always say right away, it's got to do with the money we make from the work that we do, our sense of self, our self-esteem, our internal body. It's very connected to our mouth, to food that we eat, our deep core belief system, but it's also the house of ancestral patterning. So this is going to be a very interesting time because for a lot of, first of all, on a very basic level, a lot of you might be really interested. It doesn't have to be today because this is going to be a long transit and technically Pluto is still in Capricorn, but expect to get like very interested, a lot more interested in like your family history and maybe even wanted to digitize like old family photos, things like that, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and which is connected to technology and advances in technology. Also, a lot of you may be getting diagnosed with some sort of issues having to do with your health that's very sort of connected to family energy, but thank goodness it's in Aquarius, which has to do with advances in science and medicine. So there will likely be like a cure for it or some sort of approach. So kind of just wanted to like get that out of the way. But it is Pluto, and Pluto has to do with endings and beginnings and change and transformation, and it's there and then it's not. You want to think about a big wheel, it's moving, and he's digging up a lot of stuff from the past for you to look at. So understand that the second house having to do with having to do with security, this is going to be a thing. Expect that. Expect there to be a lot of changes around the acquisition of money and possessions and the quest for security in general. Nothing in that arena should be taken at face value when Pluto is in the second. Now, with Pluto here in the second, it is necessary to discover the underlying motivations which propel such passionate and such strong feelings about money and security. Now, obviously, if you also have Chiron in Taurus, you're extra concerned about security. This is not gold digger energy, my friends. This is like literally like, am I going to be okay kind of thing. Now, for some, money is imbued with power of the deity, right? Which determines if, you live or die, right? It's very like that level hyperbolic, that level of am I going to be okay? God, please help me kind of thing, right? There could be periods of that, right? Money and power can be accrued, though, as a way of controlling others, or for a lot of you, just as a safety net for you, right? Especially if you feel like there is a certain person or a certain situation or just the world in general feeling like someone's out to destroy you, or a little more realistically, they don't have your best interests in mind, right? Whether it's that job, that relationship, whatever it is. So you get very strategic with your money, okay? Material success will likely be sought as a way of enhancing, for many of you, sexual attractiveness in general, right? But there is a sensuality about the second house because it is a Venus ruled energy. But just your attractiveness in general, there's a peace that money is going to bring you. And I know that sounds kind of silly because doesn't just knowing that you have enough money bring peace to everyone, but this is different. It's a different kind of feeling. Now, you may see amassing possessions as a way of extending your territory of influence and thereby regaining a sense of your your lost feeling of inadequacy or your lost feeling of being okay and being independent just on your own. Or if you were to put down, if you were to be put down by anybody in your life, if you were belittled by anyone because of your ability to make money, or if you were made to feel bad about your ability to provide or contribute or be able to make money that the way that you really wanted to, then acquiring some sort of great wealth during this transit, which can come along obviously with a certain level of status as well, may be the way of you proving your net worth to the world, right? And it could just be something that's actually quite healing. Now, you could do this without becoming maniacal and completely like egocentric about money, money, money. This is more about saying, I'm able to provide for myself. I'm good. I'm okay. And now the relationships that I have in my life are because I want them to be there and not because of anything else. Now, we could say this about money in the second house, but we could also say this about our sense of self and self-esteem. Maybe money's not a thing. Second house is also sense of self and self-esteem. And it's also there, it does also need to be this bit of a reckoning, keeping it real, having to do with your own health. right? Having to do with what goes on in your body is very reflective of how you're treating it. Or it's very reflective of something that's carried in your ancestral patterning, something that's genetically understanding if you're genetically predisposed, and then living life according to such, finding out and making some changes in your life as well. Now, wherever Pluto is, right? Pluto sets up his altar for destruction, right? I know that sounds very scary, but whatever house he occupies, because he wants to destroy, but I always say Pluto loves us. He also wants to create. Pluto is death, but he's life. He's endings, but he's beginnings. Okay. So consequently, you may feel something lurking in the shadows, which threatens to wipe out everything that you own. And this could be like a low level kind of vulnerability, like this low level, and maybe it's not so low level, but it's like this anxiety that's kind of like always there, right? You're always waiting for somebody to come and just rip the rug out from under your feet when it comes to your possessions and your resources. Um, or you could also be feeling very nervous about somebody coming along and just sort of like breaking you down as far as who you are, where you're afraid to open your mouth because you're afraid, oh my gosh, what if they don't like what I say? What if they don't like what I do? Right? So that could be Pluto's very controlling. Hello. I mean, he's like really controlling. So you might, during this energy, if it's connected to money, you might hoard money in an attempt to kind of counter effect that danger, so to speak. You might keep yourself quiet so that people can't like come after you. Pluto brings extremes, is what you really need to understand here. And so you might experience both ends of the scales. You might end up going through a period where you have no money and then you have wealth, where you feel great about yourself and then you're not. Your health is amazing and then it's challenged. Again, it's all about cycles, endings, and beginnings. So if you have become too self-centered or identified with your possessions, be it your bank account, your home, your car, your clothes, your lifestyle, whatever it is, this is not going to be a good thing for you because Pluto can come along and destroy those external forms of self-definition, stripping away any sort of outer attachments or trappings so that you can discover who you are deeply inside of yourself and also how very capable you are, right? Especially, I do want to say that especially when Chiron goes into Taurus in 2 years, that's going to be an 8-year transit. So from 2026 until around 2033, give or take. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's the window there. That's when you're definitely going to be feeling it because when Chiron goes into Taurus, Taurus lives in the second house naturally, right? And so, when it comes to your sense of self-worth, when it comes to, how you're viewing your health, how you're looking at your money, how you're viewing your foundation, during that time period, there could be a lot of changes and transformations, especially during that 7-year period for you guys, right? So, prep for it now. Absolutely, especially like the next year and a half, there are going to be some big changes there. So this is a really good time to make some adjustments to your work, make adjustments to your health, really get in touch with who you are, fall in love with yourself in a healthy way, really allow your shining parts to shine. Get in touch with your talents, gifts, and abilities and forgive your broken parts because we all have those. Embrace those and love them into life so that you can actually utilize them in a healthy way. Now, the house position of Pluto, um, even when Pluto's just transiting, it shows us where we can effectively make a large contribution to society. So here in the second, you can possess some kind of skill and ability which could influence and shape the world in some way. Okay, so this is anything that I don't feel like you guys really know what it is exactly yet, but you might be vibing it. It's like this innate resource. It's something that you were naturally gifted, right, in your life, where you're unusually perceptive, or you have a very powerful conviction about something, and you have this ability to be very decisive in times of crisis, in particular, during this transit, which is a good thing. That's a bit of a superpower. So Pluto can kind of cut out and eliminate what's not essential, and therefore sort of like purify and streamline whatever it touches. And so when it touches this sort of innate gift. This is something where you have the ability to bring something out into the world that ends up helping people, that ends up transforming people. Again, it's an energy that this house is ruled by Venus, which is not only money, but it's Venus represents nurturing. It's very connected to mothering, right? And so there are different ways that we can do this. This idea of taking care of things and moving things forward in a beautiful and healthy way. So this is a very good thing for you. Now, your income and your sense of self-worth could be obtained through professions associated with, for those of you who are looking to either get into a different industry, get into an industry in the first place, or if you're in any of these industries, the energy is so on your side here. Anything having to do with research, anything having to do with psychology, the parapsychological, kind of what I do with evolutionary astrology, anything in the medical field, anything having to do with like looking underneath things. So I said psychology, detective work, anything having to do with mining, underground work, um, anything having to do with also making money in astrology, right? Because Pluto is the modern ruler of the eighth house, which is really, we look at that space and it opposes the second house having to do with astrology, anything having to do with antiques. Anything having to do with like refurbishing, bringing something back to life, anything that has to do with transformative energy. So even like a makeup artist or somebody who does special effects, anything like that is a great way to go right now. Sounds specific, I know, right? But anything in that space, very good to go. So I hope this was helpful in some way. I feel like I could go on and on about this, like just breaking it down even more, but hopefully that gives you guys a good indication of, generally speaking, what you guys are going to be dealing with for the next 20 years, starting on November 19th. All right, guys, thanks for hanging with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Pluto in the third house or Gemini. Now, this is going to be transiting for those of you who are Sagittarius risings. But if you natally have your Pluto in the third house or in the sign of Gemini, then this section is for you. Now, in this placement, Pluto aims to transcend the ordinary limits of the mind and intellect. And that's just one angle, but let's unpack that first, right? Like for the next 20 years, if this is a transit, you're going to develop a very deep, like a deeper, you guys are very smart already, but you're likely going to have a very deep and penetrating and very incisive mind, able to see through the heart of matters. So your intuition is going to be very propped up. There's going to be a lot of focus on how it is that you communicate. So if you've been, especially speaking to those Sagittarius risings, if you've been somebody who classic, Sagittarius rising can be rather in the kindest way, a little manipulative when you want your own way. It just is. I'm not saying that to throw any shade at all. The example I like to give is like when you ask somebody, oh, what do you feel like eating for dinner? And they say, I don't care. And they're like, no, you choose. If you said, it's a Sagittarius rising to someone, and like, oh, I want Mexican food. And then Sag rising's like, really, where do you want to go? I want to go to this place, for Mexican food. I heard it's good. Oh, really? I heard they got really bad reviews, but this Italian place, I know that they got really good reviews. So let's just go for Italian food. It's that kind of thing, right? Or, you'll just sort of always sort of try to gently nudge people around to your way of thinking. And so if that's been a problem for you, that's likely going to be changing now, right? Because you're going to be seeing people differently. You're going to be seeing situations differently. So the way in which you communicate and even the way in which you think is going to be changing. Now, there could be an extra deep interest in extrasensory perception or a desire to expose and freely talk about subjects with others, and things that maybe they find as taboo or things that are not PC, right? And because it's Pluto, it could certainly be connected to sex and death because Pluto is very connected to that. But it could be just anything that's hidden in the past. And in the third house, you're going to want to have that conversation with that sibling or that family member about things that happen in your earlier childhood. Because those feelings are going to come up. Because Pluto brings things up from the past, and the third house is also very connected to our siblings, our old friends, old childhood friends, our family members, extended family members. It rules our education through high school. It rules our ability to learn new things. It's our neighbors, our neighborhood. It also rules our car and our equipment, our stuff like that. So a lot of you might be getting new equipment, especially over the next year, year and a half. You might find that you're getting a new car, or within this window of time, you're going to be getting a new phone. Third house also does rule ambulatory activity. So it's actually rules our walking, our ability to walk. So I do know, especially a lot of Sagittarius risings, I have a lot of clients who have hurt themselves and they're not able to walk as well. So I don't wish that on any of you. So it can easily come from the back with spine, right? Because spine is very Capricorn, very connected to our bones. Um, there could be challenges with the teeth, right? As this Pluto energy goes into that, from Capricorn in the second house, which has to do with everything like inside of our body, into that third house, which rules communication. So it could be very, connected to, maybe hurting our back, feeling kind of arthritic, some sort of toothaches. And so just get those things checked out. That it will pass. It will pass. It will feel like forever that you might struggle with it, but just keep an eye out on those things. Don't poo-poo it away, and just, go to the chiropractor if you're into it, and get your teeth checked out if you resonate with that. But and that's obviously for a specific a bunch of you, but you might seek knowledge for the power and the mastery that it gives you over others and the environment during this time, your environment. So occasionally you can have real strokes of genius, right? Which can be very transforming to society. And I don't say that lightly. And I don't mean all of society. I mean, there might be some sort of niche project, product that you come up with, or you come up with some sort of idea and you decide to start a podcast or a YouTube channel or write a book. Or, with this placement, writing and communicating is very beautifully aspected, I do want to say. So anything that has to do with that would be a really good way to go. That's a very positive manifestation of that. Now, because the third house does cover those are the early and but like the growing up years, the early environment, as I said, extended family, your siblings, what can be coming back around with this Pluto energy are things that um, you you resonate with still to this day, that's not totally healed from your childhood. So that rivalrous energy with the sibling or that cousin, that extended family member, whatever it is, right? The example I like to give here is like if a little boy is angry at his sister for getting more attention than him, then he may entertain a passing thought that he wishes she wasn't even around, right? And so then let's say the next day that sister falls out of the tree and hurts herself, right? That boy in question equates the negative thought with that accident, and therefore he believes that his bad thoughts caused that to happen, right? Because it's third house, which rules our thoughts, which rules those intentions, right? And so we're realizing the power of thought. And the thing is, at the same time, all of these energies are going to be coming up from the past that need to be dealt with. A lot of that bitterness and that rage, right? Because Pluto in the third house could also bring a change to the life of our siblings, our extended family, and old friends as well as our neighbors. So Pluto is about endings and beginnings. So it doesn't have to mean death. It can just mean transformation, something happening. And you want to make sure, though, that you're not saying, oh my gosh, I willed this. Did I will this negative thing to happen to this person? I was so angry with them and it wasn't resolved. And now the situation happened. So a really good way to mitigate this, guys, is to understand that whatever's coming up is normal and healthy, to face it as it's coming up, and to find peace. Make peace with whoever it is that you're feeling that energy with. That extended family member, that sibling, find the peace, right? Find the peace. Because you don't want to like feel guilty about something that really is not your fault, right? Because you could have this sort of very untangible guilt, right? You feel like you're going to be found out and punished, right? For those evil thoughts, right? And it's very interesting kind of energy, right? Where you're gonna be recognizing that. what else is going to be coming up? Yeah, I mean, just things that tormented you as a child is definitely going to be coming, and even things that you were like terrified to tell anybody else about, some sort of secret that you've just been like hiding in that basement. Well, Pluto comes and knocks on the door and is like, what do you really think of your extended family? What do you really think of your siblings? What did you really think about your education or those old friends? And where there is shame and guilt, anger and rage are not far away. So obviously, your parents, your family, they all should have tried to provide you with an environment where you felt safe, and all of that. But if there was a period where you didn't feel that safety and you didn't feel that level of acceptance, that's going to rise up and be kind of exaggerated, right, in this energy. So you don't want to let any of that fester. Pluto really wants you to sort of heal that and move on. And because just what there is no value add in holding on to that, right? So some of you may have even experienced, especially if you have Pluto in the third natally, your early environment may have been experienced as threatening or not life supporting, right? Where you didn't feel like you had a really good barrier or guard against other people. So there could be a lot of anxiety there, right? And this could certainly happen. Now, if you're just having this transit, this could certainly manifest, right? Where you feel like you have to guard yourself, right, against other people. Because Pluto in the house of the mind and the way that we process things, it's like you're going to be seeing like the dirty stuff of everybody's business really clearly, like before anybody else. And you're going to be seeing people's beautiful intentions, but also their not such good intentions very, very clearly. You know, um, in this energy, you are not going to easily forget a wrongdoing, and you may hold on to resentment for a very long time. That's totally normal. Now, the relationship with siblings is usually complex and ridden with undercurrents of competition, intrigue, for some of you, sexuality, the complexities, very Plutonian kind of complexities. There could be the same situation having to do with neighbors or extended family or even old friends. Anything like that, right? All of these old past things, again, from their early childhood coming back around. But what this does tell me is that next 20 years, so powerful on the mental plane. And that if you hold a certain attitude towards another person, this is something you just kind of have to be a little mindful of. That if you hold a certain attitude towards someone, you can box the person in to such a degree that that person inevitably acts out of projection. So therefore, if you want somebody's behavior to change, you must try altering the context in which you are viewing that person, as well as the way that you speak to them, right? And we all understand that attention carries energy. So if you want someone to change, you have to change your energy towards them. You have to change not only the way that you see them, but the way that you're speaking to them. And this is the good thing, though. You're going to be able to, because that, again, that mental plane is going to be so turned on, right? It's going to be very, very powerful for you right now. And so you want to be very mindful of that, right? Very mindful, because it's, I'm going to be honest with you, like this is the kind of placement where being manipulative is going to be so easy for you to do, but it's not ultimately going to work for you in the long run. Because remember that Pluto is very controlling. Pluto's also very believable, right? So, right, so we have to be careful. We could be very manipulative, very, right, all of that. But there is an underbelly and it will come back around to bite us in the ass on the other side. So you do just want to be mindful of that. And what's funny, this is funny, is that you're not even going to realize you're doing it because there's no malice attached to it. But it's like you're just going to be naturally convincing, but you have to stop yourself and be like, okay, wait, is this good for everybody involved? Or am I just looking out for myself right now? Let me just check myself. And you do want to just be mindful of that. Okay. All right, my friend. So that is what I have for you. I know that was a lot. I hope this was helpful for you just to kind of gauge this 20-year transit. Thanks for hanging with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. So this section is for those of you who are a Scorpio rising, or if you have Pluto in the fourth house, or if you have Pluto in the sign of Cancer. Okay, this section is for you. So let's talk about fourth house energy. Now, we just did the third house, Sagittarius rising. They're going to be dealing with a lot of stuff coming up from childhood in general, old school, sibling issues, extended family issues, and so on. You guys, the complexes and traumas and unresolved issues from early childhood, from your first family, through parental energies, those early foundational energies will likely, kind of everything that's sort of like on, underneath the surface of your conscious awareness, Pluto is going to like bring up. Okay. So you may try to cut off your deeper feelings altogether because this is not going to be comfortable. And you're like, well, why not? Pluto's my modern ruler. Why not? I'm comfortable with Pluto. I understand change and transformation. I understand intensity. I understand the control, all of that. But this is the thing, having it transit the fourth house, it's the lowest house in the chart. It's where our deepest inner base of operations. It's our emotional security. It is connected to property and real estate, and it is very connected to our first family energy. So I'm going to give a lot of different interpretations, but it's all connected to fourth house, guys, okay? So first of all, fourth house is very connected to parenting and mothering. So there could be a significant change in the relationship with your children, in how it is that you mother. Maybe your kids are moving out, maybe they're getting married, maybe they're having children of their own. Some sort of dynamic can be changing. Some of you might have your children moving in, moving out, right? It could certainly be that. Um, some of you could be moving homes, right? Um, I mean, Pluto in the fourth house, it's a moving on kind of energy. So you're at least going to be thinking about it quite heavily for the next year, year and a half, right? Thinking about, where do I go now? Where would be the best location for me to sort of root myself again? But that could initially be causing a lot of anxiety, right? Because Pluto is a very anxious energy. It's uprooting, and that's the thing. Human nature likes to be rooted. We're very natural in that way. We like to be like tree. We do. Even if we enjoy change, right? Even if we enjoy change, we like to change. It's part of the human condition. We like change as long as we feel in control and we're comfortable with it. And sometimes Pluto does not, care about that, right? But he does push us, and remember, he loves us. This is not punishment. The change is always going to be good. But there are going to be things coming up. Early childhood traumas, anxieties, vulnerabilities, all of that. This is a house that's ruled by the moon. So it's secrets, it's vulnerabilities, right? Coming up to the surface. Now, and it's so much easier to just say, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to, I just, it's going to be easier, but you're going to be made to really look at these things, right? You're going to try to exert some sort of rigid control over yourself as a way of defending yourself against these very raw emotions that you're going to be feeling 100%. And yet there's always this sense, there's going to always be this sense of something dangerous sort of lurking underneath, which could ultimately end up overwhelming you in the end, right? And now, again, this is the house of emotional security. And it's like, oh my gosh, like if I do this, if I make this change in this relationship or in this work situation or having to do with this family situation, where am I going to end up on the other side? Now, for a lot of you may be very comfortable, especially if you have this natally, building your whole life around suppressing what's down there, right? Down in the depths, down in your emotional basement, that metaphorical basement. And in this respect, you can be very dominated by the very things that you're trying to keep at bay. And I want you to understand, especially those of you with Scorpio risings, especially, those things need to be looked at, right? Because the very things that you're trying to not think about are the very things that are controlling you right now. And more than any other placement, this is a deep sea diver energy here who has to go to the depths and the depths of your own personal unconscious to bring up those hidden complexities to light so that they can be examined and hopefully transmuted for good, right? You have all the energy that you need to do this. Now, these complexes probably stem from experiences early in your home environment, which are going to resurface, and they may resurface again over and over again, right? In your private relationships, having to do with your domestic life, or just having to do, generally speaking, with your emotional safety and security, right? These old anxieties kind of coming back. And since home is the area where you're likely to feel the most vulnerable, you might likely attempt here to manipulate or control anyone in that environment, control any situation around home, property, real estate, anyone that you live with, anything like that, because you feel this vulnerability, right? And you want to control, right? So that nobody makes any mistakes, nobody slips up and ends up ultimately, whether it's by accident or on purpose, detonating this sort of inner time bomb within you where something ends up blowing up, where suddenly you have to leave your home. Suddenly there is some sort of big thing that's going on in the family, whatever it is, right? It's that's some sort of big family situation many of you are going to be needing to deal with as well, again, because this is first family situation. Again, it is also very connected to mother. So we always, for those of you who have your mom still with you, you do want to make sure that mom's health is on point and that she is going to the doctor, and any changes, you are there for her. Now, obviously, this does not lend itself to the most relaxed kind of vibe, right? It's just not, where there are probably a lot of, you're going to become very mindful of unwritten rules, right? When it comes to your ability to feel emotionally safe and secure. What are you allowed to do versus what are you not allowed to do in life in order to feel secure? Right? You're looking at your past and saying, what have I done in my past that got in the way of me being able to feel secure? Were there divorces? Were there, like, leaving of situations? Were there family fallouts? Were there, anything real? And looking at that and saying, can that happen again? Is this something I don't want to end up back in that space? So how can I avoid that, right? Because wherever Pluto is in the chart, we fear our own destruction here. And in the fourth house, it's that boogeyman-ish ghost is kind of like, in the closet, and it's like staring at you, right? Constantly from across the room or out the window. You're just sort of always seeing it there, waiting for the shoe to drop. Trying to live in the moment, but being very mindful that there's something that's changing. And if you don't feel in control of it, it makes you feel very, very anxious. So because it's fourth house energy, again, it could be connected to anything that would get in the way of you feeling secure. So it could be money, it could be a family situation, right? Whatever it is, a relationship situation. Now, you might experience a major reorientation in your life through some sort of upheaval, especially on the domestic front, because of that fourth house placement, or the collapse of the family structure altogether. Like maybe you're realizing, like, you have this major fallout with family and it's just not what it used to be. Or maybe you're reconnected with them, but it's not what it used to be. There's going to be some sort of change and transformation in that arena. And even if that's not very easy, right, to do, especially as this is especially for, it's going to be for all three of you, whether you are a Pluto in Cancer, Pluto fourth house placement, or Scorpio rising, you're all going to have the ability to sort of rise up from the rubble, right? It really is kind of like that Phoenix sort of energy, so that you could be reborn in that newer relationship or that newer dynamic. If you have to move, you're going to be okay, right? You're going to be a little wiser on the other side of it. You're going to have a much greater sense of understanding if that, family situation rolls out. Whatever it is, you're going to end up on the side where you're going to have a greater understanding and you're going to feel much better about yourself. Now, also what's good here is with Pluto on the fourth, very good indicator of very strong regeneration, right? Especially to rebuild after being broken down, right? So I love this energy to heal. This is a great energy to heal fractured family relationships, fractured relationships, but more than anything, relationship within yourself. Now, I also want to say, Health-wise, fourth house is very connected to health. So with Pluto energy in there, you do have a lot of power energetically supporting you to regenerate, to heal yourself, but you have to act because it's an angular house. Houses 1, 4, 7, and 10 are angular houses. We have to act when we have heavy placements in that space. So if you don't act, you're not going to tap into that regeneration. So you want to make sure that you're taking very good care of your health, very good care of your heart health. So, excuse me, if you're drinking too much, if you're smoking, if you're not eating the right foods, if you're not exercising, you have a lot of very supportive energy to actually get in front of these things right now, because Pluto in the fourth can absolutely bring health issues along with that. But now that we know this, to be forewarned is to be forearmed, and you want to try to get in front of that as well. Your survival instinct is going to run very deep, and resources that you didn't know that you have come to the surface, especially in a time of crisis. Now, again, if we can take this to represent kind of parents, especially mother energy, but parents, um, you know, or the idea of parenting, there could be this realization that maybe you're recognizing within yourself that maybe there was something dark about how you parented, or something threatening to your children, or something controlling. And it was not meant through malice. So there's no malice involved. Maybe you were just going through your own things, or you're realizing that your own parents were that way, that they were dark, that there was something very threatening, right, in that space. And all of those things could be coming up, right, to the surface right now to be changed. Now, the fourth house also describes how we end things, and with Pluto there, endings are often final and irrevocable, right? So there may be a need to dramatically finish just a certain phase of life, or cut yourself off from people or places that you have been previously tied to. So again, this could be family members, or this could be moving out of a house that you lived in for a very long time, or moving out of a certain lifestyle, moving out of a relationship once and for all, whatever that situation is. There could also be a bit of a cutting off because of, you know, uh, somebody becoming sick, and then, just never being the same, or there being a passing away, whatever that is. Now, a lot of you, I'm going to say most of you, will transmute these inner struggles and emotional sort of occurrences into very creative expressions. So, for instance, you know, if you are musically inclined, maybe you never even realized it, and you're just realizing, you know what, I'm going to start taking music lessons or art lessons, or I'm going to start writing, or I want to start selling property and real estate, right? Because it's fourth house energy. Or I want to start doing something where I'm nurturing other people. I want to start helping other people in a different way. This is a beautiful season that you're going into. And so much so that, dare I say, because Pluto in Cancer, the thing is, whenever we have a large transit in Cancer, we have to resonate with it, and we have to resonate with the meaning of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not easy for us to do jobs just for the money, or just have friendships just to not be alone, or just to be in a relationship to not be lonely, and just for the intimacy of it, or whatever else. We want more. We want more, and we want to feel it. Right. And this is going to be like a very strengthening kind of transit for you guys in that way. So, yeah, it's Pluto. So there's some good stuff, challenging stuff. You know what I mean? But that, I think, is very good. So you're going to have the power to regenerate, the power to heal. You're going to be really very mindful of doing things that exercise integrity, feeling connected to whatever it is that you're involved with. At the same time, though, you will feel like that inner foundation is like, oh my goodness, is everything going to be okay? And again, it's going to come in cycles. There are going to be time periods where you feel really good, and then time periods where you're going to feel a little more vulnerable. That's normal. That is the brand of Pluto, right? All right, my friend. So I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hi guys. So this part of the video is for you if you have Pluto in the fifth, if you have Pluto in Leo, or if you are a Libra rising. Okay. So any of those placements, this is going to be for you because this is going to be very activated, right? Because this Pluto energy is going to be very active in your energy. Now, that fifth house, remember, is where Leo lives naturally, right? In the birth chart. And that fifth house energy is very connected to children, falling in love, love affairs, romance, our monetizable talents, having our own business, vacations, just our general joy and happiness, being able to gamble and take a risk on things. These are all fifth house energies, but we're going to talk about it a little deeper, right? Because during this transit, you're going to have a very powerful need to express yourself creatively. Again, that fifth house is very creative. And so when I say creative, I mean whether it's creating a life, creating a business, creating a song, creating a book, creating anything like that. And you may need to be aware of this obsessive need for attention. There is no malice in that. It's really just about this transit. Now you just want to be mindful because it's a very long one. You may be overly dominant with children, right, at this time. The key to working with Pluto in this placement is the development of a healthy sense of your own power and your own worth, and not trying to dominate whatever it is that you create, be it your children, your business, whatever it is, right? Trying to find balance within that. Everyone has a need to feel important and special in some area of life, but when Pluto goes in there, in that arena of Leo energy in the fifth house, this could become like more like an obsession, right? An obsession if it's not there. You become very hypercritical and hypersensitive to these things, where you do have to be mindful of like excessive pride and an inflated self-opinion could ultimately end up bringing some problems for you. But at the same time, too weak an ego or too little sense of importance and your sense of worth and value and effectiveness could also be an issue. It's a 20-year transit. You may vacillate between those two, but in either case, you may resort to extremes in order to prove your value, right? And things that maybe you would have never really thought to do. Okay. Now, we have to understand this a little more deeply because Pluto energy, it's very connected to the past, right? And so we all have to understand that a lot of what's going to be coming up during this Pluto energy, especially in the sign of Aquarius, which rules the future, Pluto wants us to drop off stuff, especially from like our early childhood, our ancestral patterning that's just not meant for us anymore, right? And so getting into this energy, getting into this space where we're unpacking the fact that as children, we're supposed to feel very protected by our parents, right? They're supposed to find us very loving and very captivating, right? That loving parent, right? That stereotypical kind of loving parent. So it's like this person who's supposed to fight off the bad guys for us, and they're supposed to love us and provide for us, and with all of that, right? But with Pluto here, your need for that love and that approval and power can be very mixed up with that survival instinct again. So, in other words, some of you may be looking at your space in life right now, and you're thinking back, and you do it on a soul level. We don't even realize we're doing it, going back to that childhood way of feeling protected and feeling cared for, even if it was a messy environment. It doesn't really matter. It's just this idea of having somebody help you survive. This is going to be a thing that you're going to ultimately end up mixing up between the relationships that you have, the connections that you have, even within family, whatever it is, it's going to be very conflated with this idea of survival instinct. And it's very common for someone when they have this placement to experience a lot of endings and beginnings in this arena. Now, a lot of you are going to be experiencing the passing of a parent. This is very common. Fifth house is very connected to our childhood as well. Especially fifth house is ruled by the sun. So father energy, right? We do have to look at that. So father energy. But then what do we do with that? Like, what do we do with that energy, that vacancy? right? Where father kind of resided inside of self. And this idea of, and even if you haven't lived with your father for years and years, but if you still have him with you, this space in your energy that he occupies, and whoever it is, it could even be grandfather energy, it could just be a male dominant energy in your life. This idea, though, of survival is going to be something that you're going to be, thinking about. Um, it's very interesting how this is going to ultimately end up making you feel, because you're going to want to grab life by the you know what, right? In order to experience. So a lot of you are going to be focusing on high achievement. A lot of you are going to be feeling a lot of disappointment in yourselves and your lack of recognition and worth and achievement thus far. There can be an angry resentment towards those who appear more successful. I mean, these feelings can come up. We just want to call them what they are. You don't have to stay there, but it's just a matter of recognizing when they come up, that's what it is. Call yourself out, because failing to win some sort of status that you think is important for you to seek, for you to further your status, which inevitably it's always going to be all about this idea of survival instinct. Whatever you think that you need to go after that's going to help you survive better, that's what you want to go after. And if somebody else has already arrived in that space, it's going to make you feel very uncomfortable. So again, you want to just call yourself out in that arena. Because you're gonna want to do things bigger, you're gonna want to do things better. With Pluto in this space, it's like that, when we were kids, right? We used to play in like the sandbox, right? And we would be able to like develop these beautiful creations right in the sandbox. But it's kind of likening it now to like adulthood. You don't want just any sandbox, right? You don't want just anything. You want something that's like bigger and better, right? In that Leo energy. But this is going to be expressing from just these energies are going to be expressed from the depths of your feelings, who you really are, and getting in touch with what it is that you're afraid of and what it is that you want out of life. And when you connect to the outside world, you just want to make sure that there's recognition of where you're not comfortable with where you are right now, and not going into a space of bitterness, but rather going into a space of saying, you know what, I'm going to fix this. I'm not where I want to be. I'm going to totally fix this, whatever it means. Or I'm going to figure out a way of finding peace with where I'm at. It could really one way or the other. But really the depths are going to be coming up, right? Because this is like, you want to make sure of not being bitter towards anybody. It could literally make you not want to speak to certain people in your life. And not that you want to be like that, because that's not typically who you are, but it's just going to be that painful, right? And it's going to be that scary for you when that comes. And I know this sounds very like negative and scary, and this is not meant to be, because Pluto brings beautiful things as well. But let's just call out the ugly side of him, right, for a minute. And none of this even has to be going on out in the 3D for real in a way where it's deeply impacting your life, but it's within you. Right? These unresolved energies from the past, and it's going to be mirrored up to the present. And if you're not happy where you are and you view other people as happy, you're going to be feeling a certain way about it, and you just want to call that out. Now, creative self-expression may come out as a result of all of this. Any sort of like trauma or block that you're working through, any sort of difficulty that you have connected to fifth house energy. Maybe you're having a hard time having a child. Maybe some sort of very difficult situation happened with a child. Fifth house energy, we want to keep our eyes on our children, make sure that they're okay. Listen, Pluto is about endings and beginnings. It does not have to mean death, everybody. Okay, it doesn't. But there could be change and transformation. So that, because the fifth house especially represents your oldest child, you want to check on their health, on their emotional status. Who are they hanging out with? Are they happy? What's going on with them? Such an important time to not be judgmental. Such an important time to be like a sort of an open vessel, to be able to to accept and just understand, right? To just really understand, especially when it comes to the arena of children, because chances are at least one of your children, especially the oldest, is likely going to be going through a period of significant change and transformation. So you want to be mindful of that. But this is going to be a time of problems that you encounter, whether it's with your children or whether it's about having children or even in a romantic connection. His fifth house is also falling in love, love affairs, romance, your own business. Any problems that pop up, they serve to bring unconscious patterns and unfinished issues from early life to the surface where there's a greater chance of resolving them. So, in fact, some of you who are having a child, or maybe even having a grandchild, where you're going to be learning through them, through this new child that entered your life, so much about yourself, you know? Some of you with this placement will be able to give expression to very creative works, fifth house energy, that can end up waking up and transforming other people, right? Now, that fifth house, again, it can be anything having to do with your own business, but it could also be anything having to do with the arts, anything having to do with fifth house is the energy of the entertainer, but it's somebody who's in front of people. So as long as it's something that you're connecting to with other people, a lot of you have very good energy to be very creative in that way. Now, I want to just speak to the men for a minute. For those of you, those men with this placement, becoming a father for the first time brings a very real awakening to the fact that you are no longer that eternal youth yourself. Parents with this placement in general may meet their own dark and sort of subsided behaviors, you know, through the behavior of your children or through the behavior and the reaction of your children towards you or how it is that they're acting in life in general. Now, the parent with Pluto in this placement may over control or try to dominate a child, not purely out of a desire to love and protect, but because you're frightened of that, you know, frightened for the child, right? You know, you know, if left to your own devices, you might do something which is personally threatening. So you really want to be careful here when it comes to anything that you deem as fun, anything that you deem as important in the moment. So Pluto in the fifth, we have to be careful how we have fun. We have to be very careful. Do not gamble, okay? I just, like literally for the next 20 years, don't gamble. It's the house of gambling with Pluto there. You might win, but then you're going to lose even more, right? So if you win, if you if you can't help it and you win something, stop. All right. Don't run it again. You're going to lose even more. But there could be Pluto in the fifth, you know, a lot of times they see this with, you know, people who like to drink recreationally and they end up developing a very bad addiction. And it ends up damaging their heart. It ends up damaging their internal body. I'm just giving this as a basic example. Skydiving, anything like that, that where you can easily put yourself in a very threatening situation that's overt like that. I don't mean not don't have a good time. That's ridiculous. But you want to be careful there, okay? You want to be careful and you want your children to be careful, okay? Especially your oldest child. And because if you're like this, you know, where you're very dominant or domineering, having to do with one of your children, that child may break radically from you to be their own person, to have their own identity. So in the long run, it's much better off for you as a parent, if you're a parent, to own your own fear and complexes about what was going on. You know, in your child's life, that they might have some sort of feel a certain way, right, about their upbringing and just be really open about it. It's not about blaming yourself. It's just about understanding the context of how your child might feel and then kind of leaning into that to help give rise to them, right? Rather than trying to control them or avoid confrontation of certain uncomfortable realities, you're much better off just with an open heart listening to them, and that will help nurture and help cultivate and actually rise them I've seen a lot of instances where Pluto in this placement where the parent-child relationship is handled with significant strength and dignity, which is wonderful to see. You know, and then there are times where people are like, yeah, I mean, the difficulties were there, but then I found the strength and dignity to deal with it differently. Again, because it's Pluto, it's endings and beginnings. So this is such a beautiful energy to heal relationships with our children, to heal relationships that have to do with even a significant other. This is a beautiful relationship to heal the intimacy within your relationship, the romance, and try to kind of like find each other again. This is a very nice energy as well to do something very cathartic that you love to do, whatever it is. I don't know, a dance class, art, something that you just do where there's a very healing element to it. If you let yourself do it, if you put yourself out there. Um, now romantic pursuits can easily become entangled with the power and drive and some degree of sexual compulsiveness and sexual control as well. So I do want to say that those of you who are in any sort of situation that, especially with a plutonic type, so this could be anything where maybe the person's married, or maybe they have some sort of addiction, or there's some sort of like instability. There could be secrets and a lot of anxiety or challenges attached to the relationship, trying to hide the difficulties in the relationship because of money, as Pluto is very connected to other people's money, or because of the sexual component. But then you feel like you're sort of stuck in this cycle. But awareness is everything here, right? Awareness is everything here, because it's going to be intense. You're going to have a very intense sexual drive with this placement, but you may fear that intensity of your own sexual drive, so much so that you might even avoid it altogether. I know I'm working with a lot of Scorpio risings right now that just kind of shut down that part of themselves. And it's not because they don't want to be, it's just that they don't trust, or they're not meeting the right person, or they're just sick and tired of messy energies, and people who are just not showing up in the committed way that they would really like. Um, but so it could vacillate there, guys, right? I mean, you could absolutely shut yourself down, or you could be kind of taken aback by your own level of sexual desire and sexual intensity as well. Um, Others of you might take that very heightened energy and put it into something else. So something like exercise, or something like very hyper focused on some sort of activity, you could certainly do that as well. I know others of you may derive a sense of potency through a sexual conquest and attract love affairs, which involve power conflicts and dramas and things that have a lot of intrigue. A lot of that, because Pluto loves drama, and in the house of romance, we could easily find ourselves a little too comfortable in that space. So, depending on where you're at in your life, you're either gonna fall into that, or you're gonna really shut yourself down because you don't want to deal with that, because you understand your tendency can be very high to fall into that, and you're just not going to want to deal with that. But because that kind of energy carried to extremes, you could use other people too much to prove your own worth, right? Through sex, through power struggles, through the drama, right? It's sort of like a form of, dare I say, like psychological warfare, even psychological rape, because it's in the sign of Pluto, right? So true mutuality, sharing and respecting another person's integrity, these are the lessons to learn in this placement. Understanding that other people have a soul just like you, feelings, emotions, really respecting other people as long as that's there. And not only the people like with it, it's just in general expecting respect, but also giving the respect as well, right? Because it's that, again, the fifth house is a beautiful energy, but whatever's in there, because it's Pluto, we're going to see dark energies and then heightened energies. Some of you are going to see beautiful new relationships, new children into your life. You're going to start new businesses. You're going to, all the beautiful fifth house things. You're going to start some sort of new hobby. But there have to be that, it's a balancing out of energies. There's going to still be that shadow side that I mentioned. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. So Pluto in the sixth house, Pluto in Virgo, or if you are a Virgo rising. Okay, this part of the video is for you. So what is the sixth house? The sixth house has to do with our health, mental, physical, and emotional health, maintenance, body maintenance. It's our day-to-day work environment. It's our colleagues. It's our employees. It's our daily responsibilities. It's our ability to problem solve, right? It's also the beginning of legal situations, when we decide to um, sue someone or start some sort of, legal situation. It could certainly happen there. But it's very connected to work and to health. Oh, also our pets, very connected to our fur babies, our domestic animals. Okay. So, and Virgo is the meeting point of the body and the psyche, and it's the point of connection between what we are inside and the forms with which we surround ourselves with in our life. So, those of you with Pluto in Virgo and or the sixth house, right? Or again, the Virgo rising, you're going to be exploring this connection in great depth. Now, this is the thing. We need to sort of really kind of break this down a little differently than with the other signs, because when the underworld and the underworld deity like Pluto is sets up, because he always sets up an altar, right, in any house that he goes into. So he always sets it up with the purpose of destroying it so that something could be rebuilt in place of it by the time the transit is done, right? So when he sets up his Virgo, his altar in the sixth house and or that Virgo energy, right? That sign again of health, then physical illness cannot be taken at face value. If there's any sort of physical illness that comes in sickness, accumulated poisons and toxins come to the surface to be eliminated in order for the body to function properly again. Now, keep in mind the sixth house quincunxes the first house, right? Of the ascendant of health. And so a lot of you might develop allergies. A lot of you might realize that taking in toxins too much ended up developing some sort of autoimmune issue, right? These are all things that can absolutely happen here. And the root causes of these problems, not just the outward symptoms, but they need to be treated with Pluto in the sixth house and or Pluto and with that Virgo energy, or else trouble may occur at any other time. So this placement is not a time, this is no time for you to for you to um I'm sorry, I was just looking at a note that I have. Not a good time for you to ignore your health. Go to the doctor if you're feeling anxiety, if you're feeling depressed, if you're paying attention to your animals too, right? Their health as well. It doesn't have to manifest in you. It could certainly manifest in one of your pets. It could even manifest in one of your colleagues, to be honest with you, like through your energy if you're very close with somebody. But in short, Pluto in this space asks you to explore the possibility that illness is an indication of problems elsewhere, right? And where are you feeling that pain? Where are you feeling it in the body? Like this placement more than any other is a real hardcore realization of the body-mind connection, because it's well known, right? It's a well-known fact that psychological issues play a part in aggravating a disease, right? It could be noxious agents are always present in the system. Whether you develop an illness depends on your personal ability to resist these. And obviously that's going to depend on what else is in your chart, where your Neptune is, where your Pisces is, all of that. Negative thoughts and feelings, conscious or unconscious, take their toll on the body. And it could certainly weaken the body's ability to fight things off, right? Its natural defenses, making you a lot more susceptible to what you can normally combat. So this is something you have to be very careful. And you may at times feel that your body has betrayed you, when in fact, your body has only revealed that there is something off in either your mental or emotional status that's manifesting in your body. And the good news is that if you can make yourself, psychosomatically sick, and then you could also make yourself psychosomatically well, right? So by examining your beliefs and your feelings, you can move in a direction of altering not just your health, but your whole life, right? Because that sixth house, very important house when it comes to just a day-to-day experience. And it's incredibly important to understand how the body, the mind, and the emotions function as a real integrated system, because that's what this 20-year transit is going to be very much about, right, for you guys. Now, on a positive note, you have the capacity to work in a very dedicated and crazy type of undistracted way with just ease and dedication under your wings when it comes to your daily work environment. I love this, right? When it comes to your work. However, you can also take the need to be very conscientious, very responsible and practical and productive, and turn that into an obsession as if your very life depends on it. And then there we go with the imbalance, going back to the mind-body connection. So you do just want to be mindful of that. You want to make sure that you're keeping the balance, okay? The desire to do a good job, like you're doing right, is felt with such conviction and such intensity. It's like, and this is the thing, because Virgo, the Virgo energy in general has been working so hard, right? And just not feeling is valued as they should, right? So with Pluto, because Pluto is very controlling, he's very intense, he's very connected to anxiety, but he's very connected to also this passion and this dedication. So you kind of combine all of that in the sixth house, and you're going to feel like that. Now turn that energy to taking really good care of your health. Turn that energy to continuing to do a good job. But make sure you're doing a good job because you want to do a good job, right? Is you because other people, that dedication and that zeal and that focus, if it's not balanced, you could be annoying people who you work with. Because remember, it's change and transformation, and it's the sixth house. So if you want to keep your job, or if you want to maintain like some sort of like peaceful energy. It's difficult with Pluto there because wherever Pluto hangs out, wherever Scorpio hangs out, it's not meant to stay stable. It's not meant to. So we have to kind of go with the cycles. And if we're like in this space where we need things to be a certain way, and we have to be a certain way, and this is the way it needs to be, we could get under other people's skin, and then we can end up having all of these discordant energies at work. So we want to make sure of that, right? Because you can be very irritable and very critical of others who don't share your particular approach to work or your belief system, whatever it is. So relationships with your coworkers can end up becoming very uncomfortable, right? With these undercurrents and these betrayals and treachery and intrigues and even sexual innuendos. We want to be careful of that. Power struggles of all kind can easily happen with this placement. Oh my gosh, you have to be careful too as Pluto's going in, and then as Pluto's leaving in 20 years, is when it's cuspy, it's very powerful that people don't take you the wrong way at work, where it's like, oh, was that a sexual innuendo? Was that a pass? Was that appropriate? And then going to HR. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, you're like, what are you talking about? I did not mean that, right? So you just want to be very, very mindful of that. During this transit also, you may often have a desire to improve on something that already exists, right? I know this can end up going really well for you, having to do with either your daily responsibilities or even something in work, right? So you're taking the way that something is done, and you're going to feel very focused on improving it because this is the house of the problem solver. So you're going to want to go in and just, make something better than it was. So how do we make things better than they are, right? We have to identify flaws, and identification of flaws can be this compulsivity, right? Where you're compulsively searching for flaws, really looking for sweeping changes that need to be made in order to increase efficiency. Now, this could happen having to do with your home. This could have to do with the way you're running relationships. This could have to do with something, of course, having to do with work, anything like that. Your work must be deeply engaging and consuming. This is going to be very important for you guys. Otherwise, you're going to lose interest and possibly set up situations which force you to leave your job for another. You may even become sick just in order to free yourself from a work situation that you're not into anymore. You can also lose a job because of the conditions beyond your control, such as, some sort of like economic recession on a micro level, having to do with the business that you're involved in, or maybe they're doing some sort of like restructuring situation, or anything like that, or even some sort of like larger societal circumstance going on there. And while, the change or the loss of that employment can have a serious effect on your psychological well-being, examining the emotions and the feelings that need to be brought up to the surface, right? Um, of that experience of what's going to allow you to figure out contingencies having to do with that particular arena, because really you're just being pushed for further growth. I mean, you're not losing anything that you were meant to stay in. So if you're losing a job, it's just a job you hated anyway. Or if there's something that, you know if you suddenly develop some sort of allergy, it's because you weren't meant to be having that food anyway. Or if if something manifests having to do with your health, it's because you were doing too much of something anyway, or you were exposing yourself to something that you shouldn't have anyway, right? Nothing's going to be lost here that was ultimately meant to be on your long-term path. And that's the most important thing we need to remember. We need to look at this glass half full because Pluto loves us. He is not the big boogeyman. He is not the big meanie. He's not. He's very, I mean, he's controlling, Yeah. And he wants to make us feel anxious and he wants to make us feel depressed for a little bit because he wants to push us. He's always working with Chiron to heal us, to make us feel better about things. So just keep that in mind. Nothing that you were meant to be in or meant to be doing is going to be taken away from you. It's just not. All right, guys. So I hope that was helpful in some way. Thanks for hanging with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Okay, so this section is going to be for those of you who have Pluto in the seventh house natally, Pluto in Libra, or if you're a Leo rising. Okay, so those three, this part of the video is for you. Okay, so we have it in the seventh house of marriage, contracts, literal and metaphorical, as well as energetic output, as well as our doctors, right? So the workings of Pluto here can be observed, though, most clearly in the area of partnerships. And rather than viewing marriage, close union, or even close business partnerships as merely like happily ever after kind of thing, it's better for you to understand these relationships as catalysts or agents for personal transformation and growth and change right now for you guys. Okay. So a lot of you may be feeling like, you're going through some very sort of karmic situation, some sort of soulmate situation. Soulmates are in our life for a season, a reason, and not always a lifetime, or some sort of karmic circumstance as well. Many of you may be feeling like that. But relationships will plunge you into deep emotional complexes, which have lurked in the recesses of your psyche from far back into your childhood. These energies are going to be brought up to the surface, even further back than that, if you believe in incarnation, and through issues connected with partnership, part of your nature, which has been buried, repressed, or kept under control by the ego, will erupt messily into your everyday life. And after that blast, and there is the task of putting yourself back together again. It is a true Phoenix energy, but hopefully with a much greater awareness and understanding of your own complexities. A lot of you are also going to be realizing, if you're doing the deep work, that there is this very direct connection between the marriage or lack thereof that you experienced in that fourth house energy, right? Having to do with your early environment and how that experience framed the way that you actually do relationships with people, and how it is that you even sort of project yourself in relationships. So a lot of that is going to be coming up. Now, if you're not wholly in touch with your own darker or undifferentiated side, then you might ultimately end up projecting these qualities onto your partner or onto somebody else if you have not acknowledged your potential for ruthlessness, treachery, betrayal, jealousy, envy, possessiveness. You seem to attract or create those very traits in other people during this transit. So remember that the nature of life towards wholeness needs to be decided, right? We need to go for this idea of wholeness, where, and what does it mean to be whole? It just means to have a certain level of self-awareness and not project out, right? That's what being whole means. So, and if you're not living in that space of wholeness, then the outside is going to bring it in to you in a way where you're going to be made to see where you need balance and where you need those holes in your souls filled, and as road as that sounds, right? That's what, and so Pluto's going to bring those things through other people, because wherever Pluto falls in the chart, right, he always wants to set up an altar for destruction, but only because, and that sounds very ominous, right? But he also wants to set up new beginnings. So we have to break things down in order to have new beginnings. So here, right, where it's that the god of death and destruction can be found, right? You may sense your own proclivity for destructiveness in the area of relationships, and then consequently live in fear that others might be capable of the same behavior towards you, right? Where it's like recognizing within yourself what you can totally do, right? It's like, oh, I totally have the ability of doing that, and then fearing that that can happen to you. Again, Pluto is very connected to this idea of fear. So we want to be mindful of that. That's on the one hand. And remember, this is a very long transit, so you may resonate with it that way for a certain period of time, or you may totally disown your own destructive energy by just attributing it to another person, right? So you can, say, well, I'm like this because of you or because of them, right? And that's not healthy either. So, because of a nagging apprehension that sooner or later the other person is going to disrupt that relationship, you may have difficulty trusting your partner, feeling safe in any kind of relationship, any kind of union, even in a job. Ever feeling like really safe in your job, not feeling really safe, even having to do with like your energetic output at work, always feeling like you have to change things up. And you would be wise to do that. That's a very good way of working with Pluto and I'm not talking about changing your jobs all the time, like kind of always try to consistently like recreate yourself within that arena, like whatever area that you're in as well. Now, attempting to not deal with these things to avert such like catastrophe, the relationship ending, the job ending, that connection ending, right? If you're doing whatever it is, right, and you want to avert it, you might try to overly dominate the situation. You might try to possess or control your partner or control the situation. Now, unfortunately, such behavior often serves to drive others away, turn people off. Okay. So you want to be careful there. Okay. We don't want to do that. Because thereby that could ultimately end up bringing about a situation, the very thing that you were afraid of that thing ending, right? So you understand how that can ultimately be like a self-fulfilling prophecy there, and as in, the case with Pluto in any house or sign, the deity which brings, illness is also one that brings the cure, and again, endings and beginnings, life and death. So to clean up the mess that your own unconscious complexities land you in, Pluto will give you a shovel and will say, start digging in this arena when it comes to your deepest relationships. And it's definitely going to tell you to get to business digging down how you even structure relationships and how you relate to people, connecting it back to your childhood. I mean, this is what he wants. He wants you to dig, and in the process, you may even unearth some very good reasons why everything's happened the way that it has. I've seen this in more than a few instances where those with this placement wanted to end a relationship or were afraid to do it for a bunch of reasons, and invariably they somehow provoke the other person to end it for them. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of you could be in that space right during this particular transit. Now, Pluto is a planet of extremes, and in this sense, it's oddly placed, right? because this is the house of balance and of sharing and learning cooperation. So there could be a real concern with those things, right? Because Pluto is connected to this idea of control. So you could become like a little obsessed with the idea of balance and sharing and communication, right? And the issue of, who has the greatest power in the relationship, this idea of power and control. Um, I mean, especially if you have Pluto in this house natally and it's retrograde, woo, you do not want to be controlled. I'm going to talk about Pluto retrograde, generally speaking, at the end of the video, so you can hop to that after this. But just Pluto in the seventh, there's going to be a strong need to not be controlled, and that's the thing, right? Now, some of you will give all of your power to another person, but you're going to feel like you're being swallowed up by the relationship. Others of you are not going to feel safe unless you're the ones who are in charge. But in either case, it doesn't really matter. Pick one. The balance of power is unevenly shared. And the lessons of true mutuality are still needing to be learned in that space, right? So sooner or later, one of the other partners, right, with you or your boss or you or your significant other or, whatever it is, may feel the need to break free in order to grow beyond the constrictions of whatever arrangement that you guys are in at that point. So it would be expected for you to actually have difficulty eliminating or letting go of a relationship, with this placement. And this may evince a kind of loyalty, which is determined to keep going. Let's keep working at it. Let's not give up yet. Or your identity might be so tied up in the partnership that to lose it would be like a death to you. Pluto may require the complete breakdown and elimination of an existing relationship to allow for the continuing, individuation. You guys are individuals, for each of you, for you, not only you, but also your partner. And that's going to be for many of you. Now, on the other hand, Pluto also suggests that a certain relationship can endure a whole bunch of mini deaths and rebirths, coming up stronger each time and lasting for a long, long time. Okay. Now, I do want to say also that for the next 20 years, those of you with this placement, you have the ability to help others through very painful times of crisis and transition, which is beautiful. Some of you may have a very profound influence on society in general. I see this a lot of times, with lawyers and healers and counselors and psychologists and even astrologers and all of those Plutonian kind of areas of work. But at the very least, being somebody who is going to be very beneficial counsel for those closest in your life. So it's a lot. You guys have a lot to consider in that space. So it's a long transit. Come back and check this. Because again, it's not going to be the same for the entire 20 years throughout, right? Even if you're not resonating with it now, remember Pluto is not full throttle into Aquarius yet. We do have another month, and then he's going to be stationed there for the next 20 years, guys. Okay. So I hope this was helpful in some way. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Bye-bye. So, for those of you who are Cancer risings, or if you have Pluto in the eighth house or Pluto in Scorpio, this part of the video is for you. Now, especially for those of you who are Cancer risings, you're going to be feeling this transit in your eighth house. But if you have Pluto in Scorpio, it's going to be, especially over the next year and a half, you're going to be feeling that area of your life very deeply, as well as eighth house energy. So let's unpack this. And Pluto naturally rules the eighth house, so he's very exalted. He lacks being home. And this placement describes, though, what passes between people. And with Pluto here, there is this token of exchange between people, and that token is intensity. There is nothing light about this transit when it comes to you dealing with other people. So partnerships may involve power struggles, physical or emotional violence, and I hope not for any of you, or breaking of taboos, right? Anything that's been like the dark family secret, Behaviors that have been really unacceptable to this point are just not going to be acceptable anymore in relationship. If somebody's been like really narcissistic, abusive, anything like that, in this energy, all right, we're just going to lay it on the line. It can be challenging, and there are also good aspects to it, right? So just listen through, because this is a 20-year transit. You can have a propensity for tragic, tortured, and transformative relationships that are literally like the Romeo and Juliet. You know, you wanted the Tristan and Isolde. You really want to understand like that drama, that there is a tendency towards, you know, with Pluto in this space, behind the symbolism of the sexual act, because this is the eighth house, it's where sex lives, okay? Behind the symbolism of that act is a craving for this idea of self-transcendence or power. Like you just want to be able to transcend whatever is in that eighth house. So whether it's the intimacy or whether it's being financially dependent on someone, or whether it has to do with some sort of legal situation, or even if it has to do with money. As the eighth house is very connected to debt, taxes, and other people's money as well. And any money coming to you from someone else, whether it's a divorce settlement, whether it's an inheritance, whether it's a stock market connected kind of thing. But again, it's also debt and taxes, that kind of energy, okay? There's something that's like very intense about it here, okay? So fearing the excessiveness of chaos, of your, you know, powerful emotional drives, you may attempt to avoid close contacts altogether. And I've seen this a lot. It's just like, I don't want to get into it. I don't want to exchange money with anyone. I don't want to be intimate. I don't want to deal with this marriage situation. I don't want to deal with that, right? This could be a very real thing. Now, with Pluto in the eighth is sometimes describes this idea of conflict, treachery, and also intrigue around other people's money, other people's values, the way other people show up in relationship. So there's a lot of that. And you're going to have this very real desire to sort of protect yourself. Now, complications and long drawn out problems can arise over things like inheritance, taxes, business deals, divorce settlements, especially if Pluto is adversely aspected at any point. Of course, in 20 years, you know, just be mindful and listen up for any sort of challenging aspects to Pluto in that eighth house if you're dealing with any of those types of legal situations. So just use that as a little bit of like a weather vane for yourself, as far as how things are going to roll out dealing with any sort of legal situation. But you know, your value system in general may differ significantly from a partner, or it could be an intimate partner, it could be a marriage partner, it could be a business partner. It doesn't matter, or at least what the partner believes in may dramatically affect and change you. And you may want to challenge and tear down what another person holds in esteem. And it needs to be understood that wherever Pluto and Scorpio sit in the chart, and I say this all the time, things are not meant to stay stable. There is a need to transform in that area. There is a need to transition and to end and then begin something. So since this energy rules how you show up as a we in relationships and business partnerships, as well as how you experience investments and money coming to you through other people, the best way to become comfortable in this energy is to value the lack of stagnation inherent here and be mindful of the need to grow and transform in this area, especially if things had been very stagnant. There's going to be a lot of big movement forward. And remember now, Pluto never takes away what was meant for you. So you have to be very mindful of that, that if you're entangled in some sort of legal situation, however it's meant to turn out is how it's meant to turn out. Nothing is going to be held back from you. That's meant for you. It's just not going to happen. Now, besides having to deal with, again, we have to remember what goes on in this house. It's the house of passion and aggression and sexual drive and all of those very deep, intense energies. You will most likely need to struggle and work through in any sort of issues around change and around death and endings of things. I've seen a lot of people with this placement flirt with death by putting themselves in very dangerous or very risky situations, or by unconsciously playing out self-destructive tendencies where, you know very well that you shouldn't be doing this, this, and this, and you do it anyway, kind of very, tantalized by the dark side. I'm keeping it straight with you guys. I've seen this many, many times with getting into extramarital affairs, doing very questionable things as far as intimacy, very questionable things surrounding money, you know. So you want to be careful of that. And the reason why I'm saying be careful of it is because the energy is going to almost be a little too easy in that arena, you know? Better to use the illuminated side of it, because I've also worked with a lot of people who are fascinated by the whole topic of death, rebirth, digging deep, the dark side, the occult, astrology, getting really into things like detective shows and murder mysteries, all of this stuff, ideas about, I don't want to say demons and witches because I don't like that stuff, but so please don't do that or don't let me know about it. I'm not judging, but I understand the power of that stuff, so try to stay away from that. But using all of that, you could become fascinated by it and research extensively all of those areas, reincarnation, any sort of metaphysical concept, anything like that. But you do, as a final closing thought, you do want to be careful of how very, very easy it is going to be for you to manipulate people here. Subtly, subtle. It's very indicated. Okay, so just be mindful of that. You want to just make sure that, you know, that you're exercising integrity all the while, right? Because you don't want to manifest any nasty karma for yourself. All right, my friends, I hope that was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Pluto in the ninth house, or Pluto in Sagittarius, or if you are a Gemini rising, okay? This part of the video is for you. Okay, so this is a 20-year transit, guys. Now, ninth house energy, I have observed that in general, again, it's ninth house and or Sagittarius energy. I've observed that in general, people approach this placement in two very, very distinct ways, okay? Some of you for the next 20 years will be plunging into affairs of Sagi or ninth house energy, which would be religion, the law, legalities, local governance, higher education, foreign lands, foreign travel, foreign cultures, anything like that, importing and exporting, publishing, marketing, advertising, negotiating, getting something out there to the world, right? And the religion could be organized or otherwise, right? So it could really even just be spirituality and grappling with those deeper issues and implications of that realm. And inevitably, you will be changed and transformed by what you experience there. And that's perfectly normal. Others of you are going to try to preserve what you already believe in, right? This existing sense, right? And what it is that you fear in that realm. You could fear what that planet might do to you. Fear religion. You could fear politics. You could fear the change having to do with foreign lands and foreign cultures, right? Suddenly there could be a lot of anxiety when it comes to what's real, what's not, what's truth, what's not. Right? This could be very real for you guys. Okay. Especially in that ninth house, especially, like in the US, which is a Sagittarius rising. So Sagittarius energy is going to be very relevant, for all of us here. And so Some of you are going to be going on like one end of the spectrum or the other, but keep in mind it's a very long transit, so you can certainly vacillate from one end to the other. But a lot of you are going to try to preserve your already existing sense of self and fearing what that planet might do and close the door, try to shut out Pluto altogether. And if you try to do that, keep in mind Pluto is a lot more clever than maybe we realize, and he knows how to break locks. So if you're trying to lock him out and really avoid the change and transformation and not accept the change and transformation in a particular way, then that, it's Pluto's going to get in there anyway. Okay. So now on one level, the challenge for many of you could be to join Pluto in this quest for deeper awareness of the ultimate concerns of life, right? And these important things, I mean, religion, politics, or safety or security, having to do with foreign lands, our ability to grow, what it is that we believe, where does God fit into our life, if at all, right? I mean, everybody's a little different, for sure. And so God is being revisited in a way by many, many people right now. I mean, more than in decades, to be honest. And a lot of this does have to do with the year's energies. It's not only Pluto. I'm going to do a separate video on that, but this idea of faith and believing, right? Now, with Pluto here, religious and even philosophical issues are often approached with a seriousness and a reverence, as if your survival depended on coming to grips with the nature of God and existence, right? And what it all means. That spiritual drive can be obsessive and fanatical with this placement. There's no question. You are often you have this ferocious appetite to just learn, listen, read, whatever it is, to find answers and to discover the basic irrefutable laws and the dark undercurrents and depths of the psyche in this particular area. And what you're really looking for is the ground under your own feet. You're trying to figure out what it's all about. What are we standing on? What are we standing on as a people? Metaphorically. Do you know what I mean? And this is going to be this is a very common energy when you have Pluto in this life in this particular house. And how can life be faced unless there is something to actually stand on? And you're going to want to know what you're standing on, even if the ground is messy, even if it's muddy and it's slippery and it's treacherous and it's wet and whatever it is, it's better than no ground at all, right? And you're going to feel and this is a very fiery house, right? It's ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter doesn't play around. Sag is a fiery energy. So there's going to be a lot of passion and motivation. Now, even if it turns out that life has no givens and there is no preordained design or structure to existence, right? If that's what you ultimately end up finding, those with Pluto here still desperately need to find out ways to create meaning along with solid things to believe in. But Pluto is a destroyer as well, right? Because he's about endings and beginnings, right? And sooner or later, your philosophies may be subjected to some sort of, for lack of a better term, like a purgatory, right? Where you're going to have to really check yourself and check your values and your belief systems, or it's going to be torn down and constructed brand new. And in this sense, you're going to feel either betrayed or let down by your very cherished religion or your belief system or your politics or whatever it is that you believed in. And the collapse of a belief system may be an almost overwhelming experience, throwing you into deep despair and depression until you're reborn again through another one, because you will be. This is a long transit and it's all about endings for beginnings. So your dogmatism and self-righteousness could stem from the fear that if another person's philosophy contradicts your own, then what you believe in may have to be questioned. And rather than endangering the sanctity of what you've worshipped and what it is that you continue to adore, you may ultimately try to control what everyone else believes in or convert to others and to their side, right? A lot of you may just do that. It's like, the hell with that. Let me just go with the group think, right? A lot of you may be in that space. A lot of you will not, but it's going to be this very heightened energy there. It's not going to be like, there's nothing vanilla or gray about it, right? Now, again, for those of you with this placement, you may come to realize that God may not be all justice, beauty, and light. probably omnipotent. He may have a dark side to his nature and occasionally decide that he doesn't like you. And I know that sounds harsh, but read the Old Testament. It's a lot of darkness in there. It doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. For those of you who believe, he may not always like you and like what you do. He could delight in leading you to the edge of a precipice, dangling you there, or destroying you altogether, no matter how good you are, good in your own terms. And it's no wonder that many of the people I know that I've worked with have met this placement with difficulty conceiving of a positive future, that there is, light on the other side of something, that we're going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be okay. And that sounds very dire. And I know that there are some real benefits that come out of this. First, you're going to be forced to take a stand on suffering, and you're going to find some meaning through it, even if it is a fate that you can do absolutely nothing about. Secondly, you will try to derive as much as you can from every experience, engaging yourself in every single moment, enjoying every single moment far more completely than others who have a much less harrowing idea of God, right? Because there is going to be this realization that there is something so much more powerful at play. There will be the realization that our minds do not work just like on their own. Think about it. Think about how we're able to think and communicate with our brain, our mind. Something higher than us had to create that. Now, there are hypotheses that that's not the case, and that's all they are. They're just hypotheses. None of that's been proven. And that will become very, very obvious to you, right? During this particular transit. Now, for those of you who believe, your belief is going to go even deeper, and you're going to be even more aware of the power of a higher God and what it means to actually follow that way of thinking, right? Just for a better life, right? And this is what you will be learning and realizing intuitively. It's like God whispers to us in the ninth house. And so you're just sort of intuitively going to be getting these energies. Now, while the eighth house, that home of Pluto, represents the drive which pushes us from within, that striving or goal, it sort of manifests in that ninth house. So it's what's very interesting here is that Pluto is a house that is Pluto in any house is an energy that is very controlling. So whenever you have something that's very controlling, like I mentioned before, you'll try to lock it away. You're going to try, you can easily try to just avoid the change or at least put it off, right? But Pluto, he invariably finds a way of sneaking in. And along those lines, I have seen circumstances with many of my clients who are afraid to search for the truth or who are afraid by the truth. And they just turn very like nihilistic, diametrically opposite to those who use Pluto's constructive probing. People like that, those of you and it might manifest like that for you, where you're just going to be aimless and apathetic, and you don't see the value in anything. And you have to check yourself. If you start getting like, why bother? What's the point in anything? You really want to catch yourself there. And I don't want to make it all about that, but just pay attention to that, because that Pluto in Sagittarius in the ninth, especially for those who are Gemini risings, death is probably the most important event in life, and we can't die unless we have lived, right? As Cicero said, right? To philosophize is to prepare for death. And unlike those with Pluto in the eighth, you guys here are not necessarily suffering from that repression or that malfunctioning of some sort of like sexual aggressive instinct, right? Like Cancer risings right now, but from that repression or frustration, an equally important or very distinct human condition is coming up, and that is the biggest one of all. How do we find meaning to life? What is it all about? And the answer is not nothing. It's not nothing, right? I mean, at the very least, know your chart, know what lessons you're meant to learn here, and check yourself and see if you're actually learning those. And that would be your North Node, that would be your Black Moon Lilith, this would be your Chiron, right? We always look through evolutionary astrology. We want to look at these kind of placements to understand, like, what are we supposed to be learning here, right? So all the eighth house, right, is that home of Pluto, like I mentioned, this idea of control. Again, something that changed in that eighth house. So what happened there? So something happened in the eighth house, like maybe within like the last, let's just say 2 years. And what could have happened in that eighth house? A divorce, a marriage, debt, taxes, other people's money, inheritance, insurance payouts, some sort of ending for a new beginning. There could have been some sort of illness hitting the scene, not only of you, but it could even be of a significant other, whatever it is. Now we're going into the house of belief, of faith, of God, of communication. Is very connected to communication because it's the ninth house, third house axis. So this is where we actually negotiate and we're trying to like move forward from those changes, right? So it's very important for you to understand. Um, um, a few people here too. I do want to mention this. I'm just looking at my notes here. A few people with Pluto here may be making some discoveries which require the rewriting of history, the revising of a certain discipline, or the elimination of that which is like old and false in some system of thought. Um, you know, but getting rid of like an old way of doing something, very important there. Now, long journeys represent another area that's activated for sure, right? Because it's the ninth house of foreign land and foreign travel. So you can be transformed through traveling or through encountering and assimilating the knowledge and traditions of cultures other than your own. Super common with this placement. There is a possibility that some of you may project the unacceptable parts of your own psyche onto another race, religion, culture, or even scope of political beliefs. So we do want to be careful there, persecuting and blaming something outside of self for what is dark and evil in the world. You do want to check yourself for that. The relationship with your in-laws, for those of you who have in-laws, might also be impacted. This could be the difficult mother-in-law, sister-in-law, whatever, in-law being very threatening and manipulative. This could also be a time period where the death of an in-law may have a profound effect on your life in general. It could be positive, it could be challenging, right? It does depend on what else is in your chart. But those are the themes for Pluto in this placement. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hello, guys. Okay, so this is for you. This section is for you if Pluto is in the 10th house, Pluto is in Capricorn, or if you are a Taurus rising. If you're a Taurus rising, Pluto is going into that 10th house. So let's talk about this. So with Pluto in the 10th, you will ultimately require a career that is deeply engaging for you right now, meaningful and exciting. A lot of you may be going through change in career. You may not leave a career altogether, but you can certainly change the way in which you're doing something. Your responsibilities within that arena can certainly change because 10th house is ruled by Saturn naturally, right? And so it's very connected to responsibilities and things that are lasting, right? And Pluto is not very exalted here because Pluto is all about change and transformation in the oldest earth house, which really does like stability, right? But looking at your career, you really want something that is meaningful. It's very important for you. So this could either be the work of a Plutonian nature, right? or you approach the whole area of work with a kind of intensity and complexity associated with that planet. So you might be responsible for reforming existing institutions of society, which are worn out or outdated, or be involved in other fields related to Pluto, which are those of medicine, psychology, the occult, astrology, psychic work, investigative science, journalism, politics, mining, atomic research, etc., right? You may even engage in a career which reflects society's shadow side, such as like crime, um, prostitution, or any sort of underworld involvement. Um, you can find yourself in a situation as well where where you're doing work to figure those things out. You know what I'm saying? Like working in like as a pen tester to find out about like within the arena of technology, if someone is trying to irresponsibly use like a corporate IT system, or you're in emergency management or something like that, right? Where you kind of like behind the scenes. Now, occasionally I've come across people with this placement who tell me that they, for whatever reason, they feel like they're just not feeling very ambitious. And then after talking with them for a while, it becomes clear that they still see themselves as being very small compared to the big, powerful world of, mother out there, or controlling energy out there, whatever it is that the individual identifies as being like in charge or in control. Now, usually on some level, you may feel at some point frustrated by the lack of influence that you have in whatever arena that you're in. Now, that feeling like you lack the influence could also be within the status of your marriage, because 10th house has to do with your career, public reputation, standing in the world, your long-term plans, and the status, how people know you, the status of that marriage, right? But feeling like you don't have the strength or the influence that you would like. Um, or the unchanging job that you're already in, and feeling like I'm not able to do anything more than I am right now, anything like that. And in many cases, it strikes me that some people with this placement may not find their true vocation until they are more capable of using self-power wisely and for the good of the larger whole, rather than for pure personal ends. So you want to be very mindful of this, right? Because it's not about, and this is where I'm saying it's important that it means something to you, but that it's also something that's going to be serving other people, right? Because this is, you don't want to make it just about money, or just about how it looks to people, just for the title or whatever it is. Remember now, wherever Pluto is in your chart, things are not meant to stay the same. So Pluto is all about regeneration, right? Endings to allow these new beginnings. So rather than trying to fight this by searching for one said thing, person, relationship, whatever it is, right? To comfortably take you the long term, understand that regular transformation is more heavily accented for you than for a person without this placement. So, maybe not being in the same job for the next 20 years, but maybe using positions to carefully scaffold you up. Same thing with relationship, right? Are you in the relationship that's meant to go the long term? Or are you guys needing to grow within that relationship, right? It certainly doesn't mean everyone's getting divorced, but Pluto in the 10th house could be, there likely will have to be changes within the relationship, but it could be maybe, within this time, especially over the next couple of years, maybe you're going to get engaged, or you're going to get married, or because it opposes the fourth house, maybe you're going to have a child, or you're going to move in together, right? It doesn't have to be a negative thing. Or this could be, deciding to work differently, level up your job. But there will be this power that Pluto is going to have over you. Remember, Pluto is very connected to anxiety and control, and he purposely pushes us to question ourselves so that we can recognize how strong we actually are. Okay, so that we can create the better change and let go of that thing that wasn't making us feel so good anyway, right? So again, Pluto does not take away things that are good for us, things that are meant to be there for us. It's not, it's a very loving kind of change, even if it's horrible the way he does it sometimes in our own small energy of perception, right? And I say that because we do need to look a little bigger, right? If the change is uncomfortable, you have to look for the big whys. Why am I having a hard time getting a job right now? Because you're not meant to just yet. There's something else that you need to work on. Don't worry, it'll come. Especially when Pluto goes into Aquarius, that first, I want to say, year and a half, while he's settling in, the change is going to start coming. Things will. Now it is an angular house. Houses 1, 4, 7, and 10 are angular houses, which means do not sit home and wait for anybody to come home and say, oh, call you up and say, hey, I got the perfect job for you. Or call you up and say, hey, I think that we should work on our relationship in this way. You be the one to get the ball rolling. You. Don't wait for somebody to come in and create the change. You have to create it because you have Pluto in an angular house, okay? I'm just saying, like, that's definitely something that's going to be coming up. And, it's all about regeneration, you know, and don't fight it, just don't fight it. Creating long-term plans for that career again, creating it's definitely going to be like this, it's definitely going to be like that. Just worry about the next couple of years. That might be uncomfortable depending on other positions within your chart. But don't try to figure it all out today. Just don't. Don't only worry about today, but look for the next couple of years. You want to look to like level yourself up and not figure it all out because understand there is going to be change in that part of your life. Okay, my friends? So hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Aries, you guys are going to be Aries risings especially, but this is also if you have your Plutos in Aries, your Pluto in the 11th house. Well, if you're an Aries rising, if you have, let me correct myself. Hold on a second. If you're an Aries rising, if you have Pluto in the 11th house or Pluto in Aquarius, obviously this is going to be a big one for you guys because not only is it Pluto, but it's in the house that Aquarius naturally lives in, the 11th house. So this is a great energy. I mean, there's an old saying where the meaning of life lies in the chance it gives us to produce or contribute to something greater than ourselves. That's 11th house. It's something greater than ourselves, something having to do with the masses, right? Outside of us. The 11th house rules technology, medical and science advancements. Our friends, friend groups, group work, any kind of group work. It also rules our daughter-in-law, son-in-law, stepchildren, grandchildren, older siblings, if we have any, but it also rules our goals and gains and what it is that we're doing for the next 10 to 15 years. Okay. Now, for a lot of you, the family is serving this purpose, right? The family is serving the maybe not purpose, I should say the arena, the area, okay, of you giving so much of yourself, right? Giving over to this thing that's greater than yourself. For others of you, it could be a group that elicits your personal potential for being good for something, right? This idea for nobility, right? And gives you some sort of cause to work for that has a timeless quality to it that would, in other words, like live on in perpetuity, for you, beyond you. This idea of doing some sort of anything having to do with group work or anything having to do with, I just love this energy, especially opposing the fifth house, though, doing anything to get, like if you have a business, to get it out there to the masses and really making your mark. This is a beautiful position for that. Getting anything out there, especially through the use of technology. Um, anything having to do and anything on having to do with technology connected to people. So this could even be very connected to entertainment, anything like a movie, a book, and anything like this, getting something out there like that. So I like that energy for you guys. That's, I feel like if you have to have this placement transiting a house. The 11th house to me always seems like the easiest place to experience it. If we have to say this, even though by the time I'm done, maybe you won't feel like that. But on one level, these ideas that are going to be, because there are going to be a lot of ideas coming up to the surface. On one level, these ideas can encapsulate the highest purpose of that 11th house. Pluto place energy, even as a transit, right? To be able to really immerse yourself in something greater than you are, which again is going to have this lasting element, this forever kind of component. Now, for some of you, again, it's going to be absolutely bent on creating a legacy for your family. Others of you, it's going to be, building some sort of business or getting something out there to the world that's going to, live beyond you, right? I mean, every time we publish a book, it lives, it's there beyond our passing, right? This idea. I mean, not to be morbid about it, but Pluto again is about life and death, but he's also about change and transformation. So wanting something that's got some sort of like lasting element is going to be a big focus for you, because remember, the 11th house is also very controlled, very concerned rather with the future, right? You know what I mean? So groups are meant to break down boundaries and change you during this transit. So friends, any sort of group work. And so for this reason, you're likely going to have great problems feeling comfortable within group situations. And that destructive energy of Pluto might be projected onto the group, and you can feel like the group itself, they're the ones who are trying to destroy you. Deep emotional complexes can be brought to the surface through group situations, and therefore it's an area of life through which important psychological transformation could occur. Absolutely. Even though it might be a scary experience initially for you, you could benefit from some sort of like group therapy situation, or even just hanging out with the right people and being very open about how it is that you feel, because you're going to feel like you're changing, and you're wanting to do different things than you've been doing with your future, right? And you wouldn't want to talk about where these undercurrents are being activated by this energy that needs to be discussed, right? It's this the underbelly of things are going to need to be discussed, as far as like, where do you see your life going right now? Now, sometimes you may end up playing the scapegoat, or the group shadow figure, acting out what others in the group have repressed or denied. You could be the truth teller. You could be the one where you're the one calling out that the emperor has no clothes, right? You could be that person. Absolutely, because that's what Pluto does. You could also be drawn to groups interested in radical reform of society's existing structures and institutions, or you may be more interested in groups which focus on psychological growth, or really even be into a lot of books, really enjoy books or videos, probably videos even more than books, having to do with anything in this arena, any kind of like social media platforms that support these ideas. I've noticed that a number of musicians and conductors have this placement of Pluto, like the band or the orchestra being the group which is essential to their work and expression. In certain cases, it's possible that someone with Pluto here might join a group as like a columnist, or for the purpose of undermining or even infiltrating it. Motives are not always that cut and dry where Pluto is concerned. So, you could be that way, right? Where you could sort of like try to work yourself into some sort of situation. It could be some sort of situation that's very connected to like fifth house energy. So something having to do with your children, where you're trying to like kind of like infuse yourself maybe into their life and somehow, or infuse yourself into that creative project, or you know anything that's like that, or infuse yourself into some sort of business situation as well. Now, while zeal for a just cause is always an amazing thing, this placement could also give rise to what some psychologists called crusaderism, right? And a lot of people with this placement are, in one way or another, they end up becoming demonstrators in search for an issue, compulsively embracing one cause after another. And the motives for such hardcore activism might be examined to see if it's not masking some deeper fear about the purpose of your life, where you're just basically looking for something to grab onto, some sort of group to belong to, right? So you just want to be mindful of that. I'm not saying that that's for sure, but you do want to be mindful of that. Now, on a positive side, this can mean very deep and profound friendships, which last for many, many years through lots of change, transformation, crisis, and all of that. Now, invariably, however, with something like this, there's a complexity about friendship here with Pluto here. Betrayal may be an issue. You may be deceived or let down by someone that you trusted, or discovered that you yourself have the ability to be ruthless, to turn on someone else. And you may realize this about yourself and actually want to create change there. Now, sexual rivalry or like some sort of sexual undercurrent between friends can occur with Pluto in this house. A friendship may start as some sort of intimate relationship and then grow into something else, or vice versa. The loss or death of a friend might awaken a host of psychological and philosophical issues. Power conflicts between friends are also possible with this placement. You may fear that unless you control the relationship, the friend might do something to hurt you. And by the way, I mean, we could replace the word friend here with older sibling, stepdaughter, stepchildren, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, grandchildren, anything like that, right? Because you can fear that unless you control the situation, again, they might potentially at least have the power to hurt you, right? And so with Pluto in this space, the reason for forming friendships should be examined the same way as the reason for forming like close connections to stepchildren, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, all of those. You just want to look at, I just think, with no judgment, is there some sort of secret or ulterior motive for wanting to be a particular person's friend or to have a relationship be a particular way? Now conversely, you might suspect a friend of treachery in this respect as well. You have to look for these motives and these motivations there. Now, this part of your chart also describes your goals and objectives in life and the ideals you wish to realize in the future, right? Again, because it's that 11th house energy, right? Aquarius energy. So with Pluto here, the whole manner in which you set about achieving goals and objectives may need to periodically be examined and revised. And I say that's a good idea to do wherever Pluto is and wherever Scorpio is. We should always periodically check in and always change things up a little bit. That's a very good way of using the energy of change and transformation. Now, you may exhibit some unswerving concentration and one-pointedness, like, I'm doing this, very like laser focus, right? But you could also have a bit of like tunnel vision there, and that could lead to some sort of obsessiveness with which you feel like justifies a certain degree of ruthlessness and deceit to make sure that your aims are met, that you're getting what it is that you're going after. At some point, there could be a significant reorientation of your sense of purpose and your direction, or the part you are to play in the larger scheme of things within your life, obviously. So Pluto has many, aspects. And he goes through many aspects, obviously, because it's a 20-year transit, right? So you just want to be mindful, like when you're listening for the astrology, if Pluto is in some sort of challenging aspect, you can be confused about during those periods where you fit into the collective in general. And you may at times feel isolated or lonely, as if the flow of history is living in a different direction of where you want to go, not even where you're going, but where it is that you want to go, right? And rather than noticing what is going right, you can easily notice first what's going wrong, or perceive the seeds of destruction and what might seem like the best or the brightest of plans. So you want to be careful, because with it in that place, you could be where you're normally a glass half full, you can easily kind of fall into that glass half empty kind of thing. Just keep in mind, it's a transit. So you don't want to get sucked down the rabbit hole of anything there, right? So just understand, in short, changes all the people that the 11th house can represent, but most importantly, having to do with like your goals and your gains and what it is that you bring to the world. It's a very positive way of using this transit. So be open to the change, you know. This is such an important year. It really, really is. All the heavy hitters are starting to move. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, not only Pluto. And so it is a time when we really do need to just open up and say, okay, cool, what's next? And let's try to be a little excited about it. All right, guys, so that is what I have for you. I hope this was helpful in some way. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Bye-bye. Okay, so if you have your Pluto in the 12th house, natally in your birth chart, or if you're a Pisces rising, or if you have your Pluto in Pisces, then this part of the video is for you. So let's talk about this because you guys are the only sign who actually has it in your own sign, this Pluto energy. So you have a pressing, this is going to be 20 years of having this pressing need, and you can start to feel it now, to explore the unconscious realms, possibly becoming obsessed with making the unknown conscious. As it is that 12th house is the house of the unconscious, right? That's where you guys naturally live, and you're going to have such a strong desire to figure yourself out. It's not even funny. And you may find yourself constantly as a result of this, constantly at the center of crisis without understanding why. Because Pluto rules Scorpio. Pluto's about change and transformation. And it's the 12th house is the house of many things. It's the house of the nurse. It's the house of the drug rehab and the institution and prison. It's also the house of absolute love and acceptance, but it's also the house of self-sabotaging behavior, right? So remember that Pisces energy, the two fish, but they're going in opposite directions, right? So it's very dual. It's being unconditionally loving and giving, and it's also being very self-sabotaging. And Pluto is all about change and transformation. So there's going to be a lot of that going on in any of those arenas. So with this placement, there is a pressing need to bring what's weak, hidden, or underdeveloped in the psyche into much clearer focus so that you can understand it. Now, you might be so frightened of being overwhelmed by the nature or intensity of your deeper drives and complexes that you exercise very tight control over these. However, many times, those very neurotic urges, which are suppressed, and you end up suppressing them, you also end up suppressing your very healthy and positive drives as well. So you have to watch out for that. There's got to be some sort of balance here, right? So, in short, this placement tells me that you feel right here like significant death anxiety. And let me explain, because I don't only mean like death as in I'm going to die. That's not necessarily that, but death is the ending of things. So the ending of a way of doing something, the ending of being afraid of a way of life ending. We can experience this when we get in front of an addiction, when we stop doing something that's not good for us. It's just the fear of the different. It's the fear of the change and transformation. And it's really based in like not really understanding what's on the other side of it. So all change makes you here with this transit highly anxious because it means the dissolution of what you already know yourself to be. Growth inevitably requires the breaking down of existing patterns or the letting go of what's familiar. And on some level, you subconsciously equate these kinds of changes with death itself. And part of you desperately yearns for growth and development, and yet another part of you kind of mounts this endless campaign to fight off whatever is unconsciously trying to change you, or dare I say, like kill off or kill that part of you, right? So until you figure out and make peace with that existential dread of non-being, you will keep displacing your fear onto whatever comes along, which threatens to change you. And until you know you're afraid to die, you can't fully live. So it's fearing the change of whatever it is. That's what needs to be looked at. So whether it's moving out, getting that new job, ending that addiction, getting in front of that illness, anything like that. Because again, Pluto does a lot of digging, right? Digging. And, 12th house is the house of disease and disease as well. It could be mental, physical, or emotional. It could be something that's hiding there that we haven't seen. And suddenly it's like comes up to the top and it opposes the 6th house of health. So we're really needing to like look at our stuff in this place. I don't want you to be afraid of it because there is an illuminated energy where there's help for you there. There's help. The 6th house is right across the wheel to problem solve, to help you with whatever it is that you need help with, And there is this very light energy about the 12th, even though it's the house of the hidden. People call it the house of darkness, and everything that's in there, in that space, is withheld from us in life. Yeah. Yeah, but it's also where the veil is the thinnest between worlds and where we can tune into godlike energy, right? It's also where we can really look at our, psychological vulnerabilities and unpack them if we're brave enough. It's difficult sometimes, depending on what else is in the 12th house. It can be difficult, absolutely. But, you have to know like what's in that 12th house energy that might be working with this Pluto as well. But through introspection, dream analysis, because the 12th house is also dreams, therapy, various exercises and techniques, you can release the energy that's trapped in unconscious complexes and redirect it towards strengthening and building the whole of your personality, including your higher intuitive and emotional faculties. I mean, by the way, this is such a good placement for those of you who maybe you do tarot, but you want to work in astrology. Great energy, right? A lot of Pisces do tarot because tarot is very Pisces. It's very 12th house, whereas astrology is more Scorpio, more 8th house energy. And that 8th house, 8th house and Scorpio energy, they're ruled by Pluto. So now it's almost like, astrology is in the house of tarot. So if you wanted to sort of grow yourself in that way or just become a lot more learned in that particular area, Pluto in the 12th is a beautiful energy to study. It's a great energy to write, research. So good, so good to just do these behind the scene kinds of things. I mean, look, the 12th house is not an angular house, it's a Caden house. And so, you're probably going to be experiencing this more uh personally, on a very psychological level rather than outwardly, given, and I'm going to give a caveat here, unless you're in a situation, it depends on what else is going on in your chart, because the 12th house it does rule drug rehabs, prisons, unless you're needing some sort of institution to help rehabilitate you in some way, which is a good thing, and that should be embraced, right? If that's where you're going, because whatever it is, whatever's going to be happening there, you are going to be, there is a protection about it, because Pluto doesn't take away whatever is good for us. But through all of these things, you're going to be able to sort of crack open, that space. And provided you can track down and deal with your anxiety, you're well equipped to search out what's weak, what's blocked, what's hidden, what's missing, right, in the psyche, what needs to be ended, once and for all. And what more appropriate place for you to exercise the innate investigative nature of Pluto than in the house of secret enemies and behind the scenes, any of those situations, very intuitive energy, kind of get into the underbelly of things, right? Pluto's all about getting to the underbelly. And rather than waiting for angry and neglected parts of your own psyche to chase you, you should just go hunting for those first. And I really suggest starting with an honest assessment of how your early life has affected your life as an adult. Because that 12th house is where you were in utero. You were in your mother in the 12th house, right? And that's very important, especially when, Pluto is connected to birth, life, and death, right? The birthing process. And the 12th houses represent like when we were in our mother. So these are very deeply rooted concepts that we're talking about that are very connected to your early environment. And you absolutely have the capacity to remove that which is obsolete and detrimental to new growth within you. It just may not be very comfortable, right? You're going to be able to transform a crisis into something productive and useful, not only for yourself, but also for other people in your life. Okay. So this is ultimately a good thing in that space. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Remember, Pluto is about endings and beginnings, and that 12th house energy, it can be very self-sabotaging. So, I do have to just say, like, please, if you are struggling with depression or anxiety to a point where you're having a really difficult time controlling it, please, there is so much strength in seeking help, okay? Please don't be afraid to ask for help, okay? Because that Pluto energy in the 12th, while it's going to be primarily impacting you personally, you do want to watch out for your own psychological space as well. Okay, guys? All right. I hope that was helpful in some way. You guys take care now. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, so I want to discuss what it means to have Pluto retrograde in your birth chart. And if you like how I'm presenting this, let me know in the description in the comments below, rather in the description box. In the comments below, I could do all of the planets in the same kind of detail. But let's talk about Pluto retrograde in the natal chart. We do have to understand what that means, and this could indeed feel for many of you like a heavy influence, but it does offer a deep opportunity for transformation as well as personal empowerment. Now, with Pluto retrograde, the themes of this idea of metamorphosis and power dynamics and the need to confront repressed emotions becomes highly internalized. And this leads to a far more introspective approach to these issues. Now, this placement does challenge you to access your power and fully engage in your own evolution, often through experiences that force deep reflection and healing. And because Pluto is the planet of change and transformation, its retrograde motion can make you feel as though you're working through a labyrinth of inner shadows in your life. And the retrograde energy emphasizes taking a step back and reprocessing situations before moving forward in them. So it's about mastering the art of internal alchemy, turning what feels like personal blocks into sources of strength. So learning to balance power, both your own and others, is the key lesson here. And so if you have this placement, some of the most profound personal growth may occur much later in life, okay? As you continuously work through layers of transformation. And once you're able to embrace your ability to confront the darker hidden aspects of life, you unlock incredible potential for not just self-discovery, but also helping other peoples through roles as a healer, a psychologist, a spiritual guide, anything like that. Your ability to access latent talents, hidden knowledge, and even psychic abilities can be greatly enhanced once you find harmony with this placement. But you have to find the harmony first. And the process of detoxing emotionally, mentally, and physically can feel crucial as Pluto's influence pushes you to rid yourself of what no longer serves you. So in essence, Pluto retrograde teaches you how to rise from your own ashes. It is that quintessential Phoenix energy. And once you've found that balance, your ability to observe, heal, and evolve will be a significant strength for you. So it's not an easy path, but it's one that can lead to profound self-empowerment. So let's just talk about some general themes that you likely experience having this placement. And one of the reasons why, first of all, retrogrades in the natal chart or in transit are so strong is because they're on the other side of the sun, right? And so for that reason, we experience that full energetic field of whatever planet is going, we say inverse, but really it's just slowing down. We feel it so profoundly. And when they are behind the sun, they're mitigated by solar energy. So the power is of the celestial body is emanating in a way that's very toned down. So we don't have that support of the sun. So therefore, nothing to to filter the strength of the planet. We experience it at its full velocity, right? So we don't have the warmth of the sun, and then we have this sort of exaggerated energy. So that's the deal. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't experience the upright manifestation. But what it does mean is that you should absolutely know what your natal retrogrades mean so that you can look at them, so you can call yourself out and sort of work them through. So let's go through some themes that describe some of the more nuanced challenges and gifts associated with having this placement in your birth chart. If you have this placement or you resonate with these patterns, it can feel like a deep lifelong journey of transformation where you feel like you're continuously having to confront and go through these internal issues, stepping into your full power and all of this. And it could just feel like, oh, here we go again. That is the nature, though, of Pluto. So the first thing I want to mention is you may have a challenging time facing things, and you may ultimately hold on to past traumas. And this suggests a tendency to avoid confronting deeply buried emotions or experiences. And these unresolved issues tend to bubble up unexpectedly, demanding attention and healing. So Pluto retrograde can indicate that the healing process may take longer, but it runs much deeper once it's addressed. Okay. So this idea of traumas, right, can certainly be a thing. You might struggle to break old patterns. Pluto retrograde in the birth chart makes it harder to let go of habitual behaviors, preoccupations, as well as outdated desires. It's almost as if you're required to do the extra inner work to break free from limiting cycles. So, Pluto retrograde, it could be really difficult to get in front of that addiction or that thing, get over that relationship, break away from that unhealthy situation, right? It could be extra difficult. When it comes to power dynamics, it's important that you learn how your own personal power works actually within your life without overextending it or becoming too controlling. Because you don't want to become too controlling. So this balance often comes after recognizing the area in your life where you feel disempowered, or the moments where you overcompensate by trying to dominate a situation. That's also a thing. The next idea I'd like to talk about are controlling issues and the idea of autonomy. The need for personal control can be a coping mechanism, possibly due to past circumstances where you lacked autonomy. And the journey with Pluto retrograde is about learning when to surrender control and when to take the reins in a way that supports your growth, but without suppressing or oppressing anyone else or yourself for that matter, right? But really not wanting to be controlled is like a big deal there. The next point I want to discuss is this idea of detoxing emotionally, mentally, and physically. So detoxing, not just on a physical level, but emotionally and mentally, is so essential for you. You might accumulate unnecessary baggage, whether it's material or emotional, and periodic cleansing helps you to regenerate and reset. Because guys, if you don't, that stuff will land somewhere in your body and it will become necrotic. And there is this very clear relationship between unresolved, like Plutonian retrograde issues and health, right? So we don't want that to ultimately manifest, right? Because what opposes where Pluto lives in anyone's chart? Pluto naturally lives in everybody's eighth house, which opposes the second house, which rules the health of our inner body. So when we have these things that we don't allow ourselves to heal, we can end up having stomach issues. We can end up with arthritis. We can end up with all of these things, okay? You might also pay attention to your tendency, and you might be like, oh my gosh, that's so true, where you may attract plutonic types, right? You can frequently attract a very intense or very transformational people, plutonic figures into your life who challenge you in a way where you're pushed to face your shadow side. Now, this could be, how do you find yourself attracting the people who drink too much, who have been incarcerated, who have anger issues, who tend to deflect, who are just like not very healthy or not emotionally available, or, and it's like these things that just don't make you feel very good. And they're making you look at yourself and it's like, okay, I need to look at this as a lesson. And a good way of doing this is just sort of kind of go through this list and be like, yeah, I did tend to do that at one point, but I've grown since then. I don't do those things quite so much anymore because I've called myself out, but this thing I need to work on, right? I mean, that's how we should be looking at this. You also have to look at your unconscious tendency to manipulate, because this suggests that there may be an unconscious power play in the works here in relationships or situations where you find yourself manipulating or being manipulated even, and awareness of these dynamics is key in order to move past them. Now, you also may have difficulty connecting to conscious and subconscious energies, right? With Pluto retrograde here, because it can create a disconnect between your conscious desires and your subconscious motivations. And this can manifest as self-sabotage or an inability to fully integrate different aspects of yourself. And that's a really important one. Again, conscious desires and subconscious motivations. You may want to be in a healthy relationship, but the subconscious motivation, and that can be absolutely connected to your early environment, is that you end up opening your energy maybe to the wrong people, or people that are meant to be teaching you a lesson about yourself, and maybe one that you don't want to learn maybe again, or have you going through these time periods of self-questioning, right? So you have to be very sort of in touch with that energy, if that makes sense. Now, another a theme that should be discussed with this placement are blocks to transformation, because at times you can unconsciously resist change. That is just the reality of Pluto retrograde. Delaying the transformation process until circumstances force it. Pluto here, retrograde, often teaches us that embracing change voluntarily is less painful when it's, you know, forced on you. You may believe that, you know, um, you're not going to be motivated to create the change. Things have to get so terribly bad before you have to actually pull the trigger on change, before you pull yourself away from something. Because Pluto can be a little tricky there to go, no, you don't need to do it. Somebody else is going to create the change for you. You don't have to do it, right? So that's just something to be mindful of, right? Talent for hidden knowledge also. Yeah, on the positive side, Pluto retrograde gives you the ability to uncover hidden truths and access deep and transformative insights. And this gift is like golden in fields where depth and understanding are crucial. So, I love when I see Pluto retrograde in the chart of like a therapist, a lawyer, a detective, anyone who is even in all of our government officials should have Pluto retrograde. That would be great because it would make them very in tune with people. Um, anything like that, where you're doing some sort of searching. Obviously having to do with astrology, anything like that is amazing. Great there. Having to do with sleep, let's talk about that. If you have Pluto retrograde in your chart, you need more sleep in general. Okay, in order for you to properly regenerate your energy, right? And these feelings, this can be very heightened, right? Especially because you're always doing this changing and this transformation, and it's the house of sleep, it's very connected to the energy of sleep, Pluto energy. So in order for you to regenerate, you need extra sleep. It's crucial for you to recharge and integrate the changes that you're going through all the time, right? This is very connected to extreme focus as well, right? You have an intense ability to focus on certain subjects or people, often to the point of obsession. And while this can be a challenge when channeled effectively, this is like a superpower. It absolutely gives you an edge in mastering something. So that's great. Now, there can also be latent psychic abilities here. I see this a lot with Pluto retrogrades, or intuitive abilities at the very least. And you find that it surfaces during, especially during very transformative periods. So when you're going through a lot of change, and because Pluto is on the move right now, expect this. If you have Pluto retrograde, you're just going to be, your spidey senses and your intuition is going to be off the charts. And these gifts may appear, they might feel sporadically, but they become more consistent once you work more and more deeply on yourself, okay? Which I love this. Hidden abilities emerge here as well over the course of your lifetime. So abilities that have remained dormant could arise through crisis or transformation. Again, here, along with your intuition. So once you've connected with that Phoenix energy, you'll likely find those abilities to be a lot more accessible for you. And then finally, I always say Pluto is Phoenix energy. It just is. And nothing like this. I mean, it really reflects Pluto's power of death and rebirth. So once you've gone through the transformative phase, you have the ability to rebuild and rise stronger because of your ultimate strength. And you might excel in careers that involve that depth, that investigation, that healing, or that transformation, like what I mentioned before, right? It's all about evolution, right? But in having this position, you have to focus on the idea of detoxing things that just don't belong in your life in any kind of particular way. This is not a bad thing, guys. So please don't look at this as a punishment, a bad thing, a bad whatever. It's not like that at all. It's there. It's meant to accelerate your growth, but you have to go through this very deep reflective analysis in order to come out on the other side. Okay, so I hope this video is helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.